Okay, so I've known that this particular episode was going to happen for a while. So I've known what I was going to say for a long time too, for the same amount of time. Today we have my dad, Stephen Kilionski, and a lot of I'm not going to be able to get through it without laughing. A lot of people say that their dad is their hero. Well, mine is actually a hero, so suck it, everyone else.
Everybody else, bummer for you. Mine's a real hero.
So I've wanted to say that for a long time. No, actually, my dad actually is my hero. And we don't often talk about it, and maybe we'll get to it today, about all the things that we have talked about it. I have told you, but I think today one of my objectives is to make it clear to you, again, all the ways that I look up to you and why you're a hero in all of the dad ways, but also like genuinely you served our country and you actually are a hero in my eyes. So in two ways, which I think is special. And I'm very proud of, and I'm proud to call you my dad. So usually that's more of an outro thing, but I just wanted to get that out right off the bat.
Good. So, now we're all crying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a hero.
What?
Yeah, I'm a hero.
Right. Yes. That's right. Yeah, I could go on and on, but one of the things that I love about you is how from my perspective, everyone's their own worst critic. So I don't know if you see yourself this way, but I see you this way. Very hard worker. And that's one of the things that I hope to be someday. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I try really hard to be a hard worker, and that's something that I really look up to you for. And when I think of you in that way, what we're going to start off with you kind of walking us through like your upbringing and your childhood and where you grew up. And I'll kind of segue later why I bring that up. But for now, could you quickly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from, what it was like where you grew up, how you grew up, what it was like. We can talk a little bit more in detail. I've got some other questions, but just a pretty vague introduction. Would you mind putting you on the spot?
Stephen Kilionski, dad, was born in Corona, California. And some might ask, California, why, well, this ended up being where we decided we wanted to stay, but we were born in California, Corona, California. Spent a little time there, moved to Anaheim, California, right next to Disneyland, Angel Stadium. And then from there we moved to Simi Valley, where I spent the rest of my adolescence and my teenage years, and it's actually where I joined the Army from. So, California boy, we're both California, right around the block from one another, childhood sweethearts. Upbringing was, there's the three boys first. I was the third. So I would say, being completely honest, upbringing was a little hard, but I was always papaps. So you can edit, right? How do I refer to? Can I say that, or can I just say
Papap,
your grandfather or
your
papap?
I was going to call him Papap. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your dad, whatever.
Pretty universally known.
Yep. You're Papap now, but I know what you mean when you say Papap.
Okay.
My Papap.
I was kind of not the favorite, but he used to call me his Peach. My childhood was spent pretty much when a lot of the kids were out there after school. School time was school, and then sports, homework, do it again, get up, do it again. School, sports, homework, do it again. Weekends, I was by my dad's side. That's where I learned to do electrical work. It's where I learned to do automotive work. It's where I learned to cut the grass, edge the grass, weed eat, do all that stuff. So didn't really have a childhood spending it with my friends, and I might have thought that it kind of sucked, if I can use the word sucked then. But obviously, as an adult, I look back in hindsight, it served me well,
right?
Because I know, when we were just married and poor and trying to trying to make it, a lot of the expenses that you would have with automotive work and electricity, I did myself and saved a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, I can't lay on the garage floor, so I don't do it anymore. So, so that was kind of in a nutshell what my childhood was like. I was there by his side, and that's where I learned to do a lot of stuff. I did have a childhood best friend. I did spend a lot of time at his house and spent the night and stuff like that. But other than that, I didn't have a large group of friends, and that's kind of in a nutshell what my childhood was like. And then from that very location is where I joined the Army, and then from there it's you know, off to here, off to there, and it's a whole another story. But that's kind of briefly what my childhood was like. Loved my mom and dad. My mom was an angel, and my dad was I guess putting it lightly, he was strict, but he loved me, and he wanted they both wanted the best for all of us kids, and learned a lot from them, and that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Forrest Gump. Yes. Okay. So Pap was, from the stories that growing up, you telling us what, like me hearing that same story a few times, Pap was on the stricter side. How, compared to people around you, like, cause I know that was like a different time, like different time. This was, you were born in 1970. So this would have been growing up in the 70s and early 80s. Was he like, did you feel like you had a stricter childhood than people around you, or pretty average? Discipline wise, like what kind of disciplinarian was Pap?
The first thing you said.
More than the average.
Forgive me, I can't remember like what happened a minute ago.
Me either.
It was
sometimes
stricter than normal.
Yeah.
I would have to say.
Okay.
And not that it had anything to do with. I think the reason why my nickname was Peach, because I was so good, but I never really had time to be bad because I was never. And then when I became a teenager, I went from here and I just shot up, and my dad said, "You just shot up like a weed," and then my nickname from there on out was Weed.
Weed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but so it wasn't a disciplinary in the terms of. Ruling with an iron fist.
Okay.
It was just, you walk the line.
Yeah. Like kind of what I picture that old school style of parenting being like. Yeah. It's like when you picture like Andy Griffith, or I think Andy Griffith was kind of like the same style, but like, I don't know that I picture Pap as being more like Andy Griffith, but like you just didn't mess up, like just a different time. Like you cared what your parents thought, you walked the line, and parenting is a lot different now. And I think that it's thought about differently, but whenever, how you've described the parenting that parenting style that Pap had is exactly what I picture when people talk about that old school, like you walk the line kind of parenting.
Yeah. And plus I followed your uncle too. So Pap had already experienced your uncle.
Like the wild side?
And all that he was about. Yeah. So I can only guess that after raising your uncle, that his expectations might have been that I would do the same type of stuff. Yeah. So it might have been harder on me, but that's just a guess. But I really didn't... I've always been a laid-back person. I'm definitely a B-type personality. I observe. Probably where you get it from. I observe, and a lot of times what I try to do when it comes to any situation is the first thing I do is I try to put myself in the other person's shoes. And then once I do that, I have a better perspective, a better understanding of my next move or what I'm going to do. And I don't know... I do know that that's something that the military didn't teach me. I developed that on my own, but in the military, when you come up through the ranks and there's all kinds of leadership styles, there's all kinds of, you have to deal with missions, with people, with soldiers, situations, and you just find all these ways to look at stuff and have different perspectives. And after a while, I hate using this term, but you have a toolbox or a toolkit, and you just kind of put that in your toolkit and use it. So I found that to serve me well, is to put myself in other people's shoes, and I still do it now before I rush to judgment or I make a decision, so I can have an understanding of how that other person feels or is feeling.
Great advice.
It is, I can only assume that maybe Pap was expecting me to do some of the same things, but I kind of watched and observed and saw your uncle and knew what to do and what not to do. And so that served me well. And that just wasn't my nature anyways. He was an A-type personality, or is an A-type personality. And that's where I was. I'm a B-type person. I'm laid back. I like to observe. So I really wasn't a problem child anyway.
Interesting.
In any respect. I think the worst thing that I probably did as a child was I took the car once on a joyride and brought it back, and that's probably the worst thing I ever did.
That's most people's worst thing.
Yeah, how dare you?
That would be... Tell us about that.
It didn't hurt that it was a week old, 30 at the time, which was a lot of money, a $35,000 full-size El Capitan conversion van.
Jeez. Okay.
No way.
How did you...
Oh, I'm going to clip one of those and put them on there for people who can know what that looks like.
How old were you?
It would be the equivalent today of probably maybe 90, 100,000.
Oh, like a Wagoneer. Like the new Jeep Wagoneer.
Yeah, it was
like
a full-size van.
That's crazy.
Black, silver, gray, stripes, the whole 9 yards, plush velour interior, and
plush floor interior.
Yeah.
That
cabinets,
you aged
microwave.
yourself with that one.
How old were you?
Wait, microwave?
Yeah.
Cabinets? Okay, so you're talking like a
not a microwave, like
conversion van.
A little oven. So think of a mini, a very mini motorhome.
Yeah, like an
or
RV,
camper.
Yeah. Cool.
How old were you when you did that?
I was about 16.
So you stole a house, basically, a rolling house.
What did you get caught?
I did.
Who? Pap or Grandma?
Your uncle.
And he snitched, didn't he?
Yeah. Long story short,
Freaking oldest children, or older siblings. Did he tell on you? Was it like I'm right away. I'm telling on you. Wow.
Yep.
Man, they did not have your back. That's unbelievable. After all you had been, because you were sick. You had been through some stuff at that point, right? Didn't matter. Like you had done something wrong, and he was like, "Gotcha."
Yeah, because he was Peach.
Unbelievable.
You know,
jealous.
I was
jealous.
Total jealousy.
Yeah.
You know that Pap was in a professional band.
Yes.
So
no, I did not know that. Please go into that.
during those years, they played gigs on Friday nights at Moose Lodges, Elks Lodge, wherever, weddings, you name it.
So this was the road van.
So they were, they were. He was playing a gig that night, so I was home alone, and
bored apparently.
They had just, they took the truck, the Chevy truck.
Oh, okay, wow, cool.
Because all the equipment was in the back of it, and kept the van home. They built we built a carport for it, so the van was in the carport. Well, I decided I was gonna take it out for a spin. I picked up a girlfriend, not a girlfriend, just a girl that was a friend.
This makes sense. Okay.
We cruised around, maybe 15 minutes. I dropped her back off at home. I went back home, and as I'm coming down the street,
oh no,
I'm looking, and something just didn't look right about the house. And as I got closer, I noticed that the garage door was open. Bright light on, and it's dark out. And I knew that I didn't leave the garage door open because the van was in the carport alongside the garage, and I went out the front door, so I didn't have to go out the door. And sure enough, as soon as I got to where you turn in the driveway, your uncle's bright blue Baja, big old Baja bug, was in the garage. And I just kind of pulled in the driveway halfway, sat there, and then he came out
feeling of dread.
the door, and that's all I want to say about that.
Okay, wait. Okay, how old were you?
16.
About 16.
Okay, 16. And you're bringing this basically a mini motorhome, and it's like, like the elephant like peeking around the corner. Like you can't just sneak in with that thing. It's like,
wow. That takes some courage. But when you said that it was because of that there was a girl involved, was it Mom?
No.
Unbelievable.
in studio too, by the way.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
When you said there was a girl involved, that makes what's that?
I think Mom knows who it was.
Oh, so she's not alive anymore.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't.
She didn't make it.
It wasn't
Shallow grave somewhere.
It wasn't one of those situations where I was trying to oppress a girl.
Yeah,
she
right.
really was one of the few friends that I had. And it was just
Clearly
the only person
platonic.
I could think of to go pick up and drive around for 15 minutes.
What possessed you to want to do that? Just seriously, like
More so,
of all the things you could have done.
not picking somebody up. It wasn't that. It was just to drive.
Yeah.
Just to drive. Look cool. Be stupid.
Well, if that's the extent of your stupid, then I feel like that's pretty minor.
I think kids nowadays like don't have that because they're just like, I'll just sit on my phone and watch TikTok. Like they don't. Yeah, I think that's an unrelatable sentiment nowadays. Like,
take the car.
what
and, like,
16-year-olds?
go for a spin. Yeah.
I don't know that happens anymore. That's interesting. That's an old school thing.
That is, I mean, that's probably the worst thing that I did as I progressed. There was some other things, as I progressed through high school before I joined the Army, but
Standard
living at home, I can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, that's definitely a case of like goody two shoes. Went out and stole the car, and now I got him.
Yeah.
From the brother.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. So I think what's interesting is that I would think that Andrew and Matt would have the same opinion. But like my memory of Pap is not the same as you've described him disciplinarian wise growing up. Like Pap was always like, just like grandma, like very sweet, like the best. So yeah, hearing you talk about your childhood and what it was like, is always interesting to me. Because he must have flipped a switch or something when he became a grandparent. Kind of like maybe you guys a little bit, but no. Yeah, just
He's just always nods from the other side of the studio.
Pap was always just like a sweetheart.
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
What changed him was your nieces.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Tommy was gone, and I always get genealogy wrong. I'm horrible at it.
Right? Yeah.
What did I say?
The nieces. You mean your sisters?
Yes.
And
okay.
Candace and
because there was three boys, and then there was some girls.
Yeah.
Which came quite a bit younger. So
when
completely different.
I was gone, it was just
daughters.
Candace and Mary.
Yep.
And they completely changed him.
I never thought about that. Yeah, I never thought
being
about that.
Being a girl dad will do that to you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I have never thought about that, but that does make perfect sense.
He basically, the beginning to middle of his life, he had us boys. And then middle to later, girls.
Wow. That must have been such a fun and like unique experience for him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
which
not
I can kind of relate to. Yeah. My kids are a lot closer together, but yeah, interesting.
64, Tommy 64, Craig 65, me 70, Leandra 76, Candace 80, Mary 81.
Okay.
Different. Like
so 5 years and like 4 and then 1. Yeah, okay.
What was the last one? 80 what?
81.
So 11 years later, having Mary, right? Was Mary? Yeah. That's quite a bit different. That makes sense. That adds up. Yep.
That'll change you.
Yep. So Pap did spank me one time though. Like that was I got it from him. He
definitely
you knew about it. I think you gave him permission to. It was no, actually you were there. Yeah, Mom was there. I talked back to Mom about playing video games when I was like 7 years old, and Pap put me on his knee over the bar stool in the kitchen, and because you weren't around, what was that? Like there was a reason why. Like Dad, what was that? Do you remember, Mom? Like why was Dad just not home at the time, or like why were we in Florida without Dad? I don't remember.
Whatever it was, you deserved it.
Yep. So we were basically there, parentless, and Pap had to be. But you were there at the time. Because I remember it was for talking back to you about playing on my Game Boy. Like I wanted to finish something or whatever. Like back then, you couldn't like save your game if you were in the middle of something, so you had to finish. Right. And that was always the thing. Is like, okay, I'll obey you in a second when I get a chance to save my game. Pap did not like that.
No.
And I remember I don't remember actually like the actual spanking. Or like, oh, it hurt. I don't remember any of that. But I remember that he took me into the kitchen and there was a bar stool involved and he had me over his knee. And yeah, that was the only time that I remember like Pap having like a not sweet side for just a moment.
He had finally had it with Nick. He was like, that's it.
It wasn't even that bad. I didn't even steal a car or anything. Okay. Yes. That was, okay. So, sports and mom. Like, we can talk about sports and mom for a little bit. So you have known mom. How long have you known mom? Can you clarify that real quick?
Well,
young, right?
There's a debate.
It's a lot of pressure.
There's a debate. So when
the exact time and year and date.
So we lived in Anaheim.
Yep.
Right next to Disneyland. Pap was driving in that California traffic, LA traffic, 2 hours one way from where we lived to where he worked. He could only do it for two years, and it's like, that's it. We got to move closer. So in 79, we moved to Simi Valley, California.
So you're 9 years old.
About 30 minutes outside of Los Angeles.
Yep.
And
right around the block from mom, right?
Yes, right around the block. I went to Sycamore Elementary and started there in the 4th grade. I wasn't in the same class as her, but we knew of each other. I say we knew of each other. And then 5th grade, we still weren't in the same class, but I knew of her, and I know she knew me because I was the one she was going to marry. So I know she knew me.
Okay. So you were like,
sight.
So you were like, is this because there was like a new kid in school dynamic or what?
No, it was
Mom's
just
shaking
we
her
weren't
head.
in that. We just weren't in the same. In 6th grade, then we were in the same class.
Oh, okay.
So mom will say that we've known each other since 6th grade. I will say that we've known each other since 3rd grade.
So what makes you think?
4th grade.
What makes you think that mom liked you? Like when you were, she's over there shaking her head.
Because all the times that we on and off dated, and then when we were engaged and got married, she told me so.
Oh, okay,
I knew you were going to be the one I was going to marry. When I stopped playing football at recess to come over and chase her around on the playground.
That's a true sign right there.
That's a big deal. That's giving
Especially for a young kid to be like, all right, boys, I'm not playing football anymore in the yard.
Yeah. And you were like an integral part of that football process too, right? Right. Like you were probably the athlete out there. Yep. That's a big deal.
But so 4th to 6th grade is how long we've known each other.
Okay. Very young. All right. And, okay. So, when did you and mom like become serious? Like,
when were you Facebook official back before the internet?
Yeah. Like, did you end up, did you go to the same middle school and then the same high school?
We did.
Or,
so the way it was for us, 1st through 6th grade was elementary, or as they say up here, elementary.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Junior high was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay.
And then high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th. Although 9th grade was still part of the high school for athletics, it was just a different location, different school. I had to get transported to the high school during sports season for football and whatnot to play. I know it's different here. It's a lot easier here, but that's how the breakdown. So there's a junior high and a high school. What was the question?
Like, when did you and mom like become serious? Like when, or was it more like an off and on thing?
We kind of had an off and on thing, but I was too involved in sports, and I think she was too involved with her friends and what she was doing. And we kind of both just mutually, said, yeah, it's cool. If it's meant to be, we'll hook up later. And we kind of went our separate ways, and we remained friends.
Looking over here for verification.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, right?
Friends.
No, because I was honestly in my mind, I was probably thinking it had nothing to do with her. I was so involved in football.
Yeah.
And it took up a lot of my time. Schoolwork for me, I really had to work at it. And so once football was over, I was home, showered, ate, and I was in the room, and however long it took me to get the homework done is how long it took me, and then I went to bed. So I really didn't have time for dating or for girls. And another thing that kind of made it difficult was Papip didn't like it either. So it was kind of hard for me to have a girl over, even if it was just in the living room, sitting on the couch talking or whatever. So that made it kind of hard too.
We just thought you had other things to focus on. Or?
Yeah.
And you're still young, yeah.
Which
understandable.
is young, yeah. Which is true, right? Was it because you were so promising in athletics that he had that opinion? Like he wanted you to focus on that? Or?
He never said so, I can only imagine that might have been one of the reasons. It could have been a combination of that. He thought I was too young, didn't want the distraction. But see, your mom was different because we grew up around the corner. We kind of knew her. We knew her mom and dad. They knew her mom and dad, and mom used to come over, even back when she would show up. We were friends, but maybe we hadn't seen each other in school for a while. And she would come over and sit and talk with mom and dad for a little bit, and then so they knew her. And then she'd come and watch my football games when we weren't dating. And so
That is so cute.
she would have been different. Mm-hmm. But other girls that I wanted to have over, it would have been, no, there's a reason we had corded phones back then. You could only go so far and talk to the girls on the phone. And,
Right. Yeah.
So it was serious. I would say serious. Everything was on and off, on and off. Mm-hmm. But a very long story short, one day, Mom and I hadn't seen each other for a while. And one day I went to, you guys don't know about these, but there used to be a store called
Blockbuster.
No, the video store.
Blockbuster?
Blockbuster.
I was joking, but okay, great.
I thought it was.
I was making fun of you.
Blockbuster. I had a friend that worked in there, and we went in there to see him. I was with another friend. We went in to see him, and he just, we talked a little bit, and he simply asked me. He said, "Hey, do me a favor? Can you go over to wherever? There's a little place called Cupid's Hot Dogs. My girlfriend works in there. We get off at the same time. Can you ask her to come pick me up? I need a ride." I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we did. We found Cupid's, and we went in there. I found his girlfriend. I told him and then we were going to get some hot dogs. And I thought this girl was by herself, and then here comes Mom walking out of the back. She was doing her homework. The business was slow. There wasn't a lot of people, and she was doing her homework. And we reconnected, and I think we went for quite a while just being friends. I now became part of her friends group, and we hung out. And that's all I really wanted to do. But we were just friends because it was one of those things where I was so worried about if we became more that it would get. Because that's all I saw that happen. Guys and gals would get together, and then somehow they'd break up and they'd be, not friends anymore. So I didn't want to. We would just reconnected. I wanted to keep that friendship. Little did I know, missed all the signs that mom wanted to be more than friends, and then eventually, Cupid. Shot the arrow and got me, and I realized, and I
start shooting hot dogs.
No pun intended. I would say that when we reconnected, which that would have been in 88, 87, 88, is when I knew, when we were dating again, that after dating for a while, I'm like, you know what, this is what I want to do. However, I was flirting with the possibility of going into the Army, so I was trying to figure out how that was all going to work.
Wow, yeah, that must have been
and
confusing at the time.
So that's about when it was, when we got serious.
Okay. So, yeah, what was the stigma back then around, getting married so young? Was that a thing, or would you have been different for wanting to get, or would you have been, encouraged otherwise if you wanted to get married as young as 18 years old to get it in before the Army? I don't know. What was that like? Was there pressure back then to not get married that young, or was it?
I think maybe there might have been.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was living on my own, so I wasn't around the influence, parental influence. Yeah. So I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I can only imagine that there probably was. But ultimately, what we ended up deciding to do was, we knew what the benefits were. Once I was in the Army, what the benefits would be. So we basically, another long story short, we just planned on, let me go in the Army, and then we'll plan our wedding and all that after I'm in, because then all the benefits fall into line for family members and the health care, everything. And so that's what we decided to do, and that's what we did. So I had already gone off to boot camp and then to medical school, and came back and tried to help out planning as much as the wedding as possible, but that was mostly done at home. And yeah, when I had medical school,
that was like me.
Came
Yeah,
back home on leave,
just like my story.
and
like,
I had 3 weeks of leave before I had to report to Germany, so we had to get it done.
Yeah.
So all the planning was being done while I was in medical school at Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, and they did it all. And I had very little input, but I'd call and they'd ask me questions. Well, what do you think about this? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's
to
good.
make you feel included.
Came home on leave and we got it done.
Yeah, that's exactly how my wedding planning went. I was in college for the last 4 months, and then I got home and we got married. I had nothing to do with it, which was good.
Probably why it was so nice. Such a nice wedding.
So, yeah, probably. All right. So I have a little list of my best memories of you as a kid. And at the top of the list is whenever you would come outside and throw football with us. Mm-hmm. So as a parent now, I can appreciate how it's not always an easy thing to do. Especially when your kids can't catch a football. It's hard to go out and throw football with them. You're but,
right.
So it makes me appreciate the times that you would come out. That I look back on that fondly. We would just go out in the backyard and you'd throw darts to us all over the place. And yeah, I think I remember most of that would be when we were older and actually able to catch a ball. So it hopefully was kind of fun for you. But yeah, so the reason why I look back on that fondly is because to me, you could throw a football like Brett Favre. You just, yeah. When Dad would come out to throw the football, we knew it was actually going to be fun. We could actually be competitive and Andrew and I could run routes and you would actually put the football in our hands and it was a blast. And I just remember watching you throw and just being in awe, wow, my dad's so cool. That's how I remember it. I would like you to can you just run us through a little bit your sports history? What was your number? What did you enjoy growing up? What was your number one sport? What were your prospects? What was life potentially going to look like for you, barring some injuries? Just kind of that whole thing, which will lead me into my next question, which is what brought you to want to join the military? How that kind of all happened.
So to comment on your, being frustrated when you're trying to throw to little kids because they can't do it the way you want to do it. What made it fun for me was it's something that I've always known. I love to teach, whether it's soldiers, being in soldier tasks or medical tasks, whatever it is, I like to teach. So that wasn't frustrating for me because the joy of teaching something and then seeing you do it, and then it becomes commonplace to do it, and then it grows from there. With the three of you, that was fun for me. I just couldn't throw it so hard. Throw it easy.
I remember it being
and then of course, look at the three. When you guys got older, then I was drilling them, and you guys were catching them, and so just to clarify, that was fun for me, not frustrating. So I've always been an athlete. I've played all sports. But the ones that anytime as I was going all the way through high school, if I could, I'd play baseball or I'd play basketball, but really my schedule was football. And then to hone in on skills, I would do track and field. I was a sprinter. I did the 100 meter, 200 meter, 400 meter relay, and high jump. Those were my main events that I did. Sometimes I do long jump, but long jump's really hard on your body. And so there was really not a lot of time to do any other sports because, you're doing those ones and you can't. So I started playing football when I was 4 or 5 years old. Pop Warner football in California, the way it works is they have the city leagues, and you start out as little
Mighty Mites.
Yeah,
right?
actually Tiny Mites.
Tiny Mites.
Yeah, the way it's different everywhere, but we had there was at least 6 or 7 years there that I played the different before you're ready for freshman year of high school. Mm-hmm. So you're always playing with the same people. But the problem is, it wasn't a problem, but when I started school in Minnesota. Mm. We lived in Minnesota for 4 years. My dad had a work transfer. And I remember the call one night when he asked your grandmother, hey, how about this trip is going to turn into a lot longer than just a business trip? What about coming up here and staying for a few years? So we ended up living there for 4 years, 75 to 79. Pap was working on the shuttle program. That was a huge time for the shuttle program. And so I started school in Minnesota, and I started school a year late. And then I got held back, first or second grade, one of those two, first grade, I think. And so for my age, I was always as old as everybody or a little older, but I was always a year behind them. Mm-hmm. So when I started playing Pop Warner football, Simi Valley Vikings, I started out Tiny Mites, Mighty Mites, Pee-wees, Junior Pee-wees, Bantams, Junior Bantams, and then freshman year of high school starts. I played with those guys, the same guys, every year in Pop Warner football, and we were like this.
Right.
But then my last year of Pop Warner, they were gone. It was for 1 year, it was totally new people because they were already off playing freshman football. Because I was a year behind. Yeah. And so then when I hit high school, I was a freshman, they were sophomore. I was a sophomore, they were a junior. When I played freshman football, I was asked to play varsity. I played freshman football my freshman year, and I did really well. I really wanted to be a running back, but I had the physical stat. I was about 190 in my freshman year, and I was bigger than a lot of the linemen that I had, and I was already almost 6 feet. So I was the quarterback. Jeez. And I just ran the ball a lot as a quarterback. They designed plays for me, so I did really well my freshman year. My sophomore year, they asked me to play varsity, and that's kind of was a turning point for me in my football career, because I think that if I'd seen in the past those didn't really have, I can say this now, didn't know then, but I had thoughts that the varsity coaching staff, at least the head coach, really all he wanted was to pad the varsity team. Mm-hmm. Where we played, there wasn't a JV team. The varsity team was made up of JV and varsity, 11th and 12th. Saw a history when my brother played of a lot of the juniors sitting on the bench just as backups and never played the whole year.
Yep.
So with that in mind, I respectfully declined playing varsity football, which would have put me back with the guys I played all the way through Pop Warner. Instead, I just would like to give my talents to the sophomore team. And so I think that turned the head coach against me. He never, so I went back to sophomore football. Well, unfortunately, I suffered a pretty traumatic back injury, and it took a long time to heal. So I missed a lot of my sophomore season, but then I came back, and as a junior, I was on the varsity team, and sure enough, I barely played my junior year. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of the juniors. He was got to play the seniors this last year. So I went to a different high school my senior year, and I was starting running back, and I did really well and did that.
You said, your senior year? You said? Okay, so your junior year, were you better? Did you feel like you deserved the spot your junior year?
Oh, yeah.
Like, was there a senior that was playing over you that wasn't as good?
Yeah, that, and the fact that I think that year we went 1-9.
You tried something different.
I really think that we could have gone at least 500 because a lot of those games that were knockdown, drag out, and we only lost by a few, those seniors that were out there were dragging their you-know-whats on the field. And if they would have thrown us in there that were fresh, we would have ran all over their defense. But he just didn't do it. Yeah. I remember a couple games, a couple of juniors. One was a running back and one was a receiver. He put in a little bit, but that was about it. I literally I practiced my butt off. Pap would come he wanted to see what I looked like in practice. I was picking balls off on defense and scoring touchdowns on offense. So he saw it, and I literally rode the bench the entire year.
That must have been hard for him to watch.
Probably, yeah, I know he was very angry, and I wouldn't doubt. He never told me, but I wouldn't doubt that if he had words for the head coach, because it was the same head coach that was there when your uncle played. So he's a longtime coach there.
Yep, kind of seen it before.
And he did the same types of things back then too. So he never changed, and he just wasted a lot of talent.
Right.
Sitting on the bench, and a lot of those close games could have been won. You put somebody fresh in there, and
competitive, like a very competitive area too. Like this is So
what level football are we talking in California? Like because they go like A, AA.
It's in California. It was a large school, so it's 4A.
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 Okay. So because around here it's like no.
It would be equivalent here to I guess A.
Okay.
The large schools.
Yep. So the big.
But back then they do.
And in a warm weather state, like most sports are better in warm weather states because they play year round, and kids will go there to play. That is such a interesting thing with coaching, like to kind of demonize a child for not coming to the varsity team and then holding a grudge. It's kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
But also not understanding that, hey, the development for that player to actually play his sophomore year is way more valuable than coming up and sitting behind juniors and seniors at that time, letting them develop so that when they come up, now they're 10 times the player because they had all the exposure. You miss a whole year, especially your junior year. Like your senior year is like, well, I guess this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were just a kid.
A lot of coaches do that. That's just, it seems like in youth sports, especially, that just coaches don't seem to get that. And that's a reoccurring problem.
I think, I know my one little claim to fame, the same coach. So I had a really good freshman year. I think as the quarterback, I think I had like 2,200 yards.
Nice.
Because most of the time, because I was bigger than my lineman, I was running for my life. And I was fortunate that I was fast because, I mean, I constantly had guys 6'4", 6'5", 200 plus pounds, 2'4", chasing me, and no time to throw. And so it was a lot of running. And I did really well freshman year, and I remember this very same varsity coach called me in, and he handed me a letter. Long story short, he handed me a letter. We took a walk around the school, and I opened the letter, and it had a big old S on it, maroon S in the corner. And I opened it, and it was a potential scholarship offer for Stanford.
What?
And he said, all that you need to do is continue doing well in football, keep your grades up, and... And then, of course, I got a few from West Point, and to which I went, I'm never, it was really, really, what's ironic or poetic or whatever the word is, that we didn't live in a military community, but every now and again on the coast, like where the Marines are, 29 Palms and the Marine Corps base on the coast, every now and again, I'd see military helicopters flying over. And I just remember my entire childhood, if I saw a military helicopter, I remember just saying to myself, no way, right? And then I'd get letters from West Point, and I was like, heck no. Am I going to, Army?
Yep.
And
not the way it worked out.
Yeah. Wow, a potential scholarship offer from Stanford, the Stanford.
And I never received any physical letters, but what do they call them back then? Not like a phone consult, but it was a call from the universities to the athletic department. Pretty much, I think at the time every single team back then was the Pac-10.
Okay.
So every single team in the Pac-10 was Oregon State, UCLA, USC, Arizona State, Cal, Stanford, and Washington State. Yep. Those were more than 10, but those were all the Pac-10 teams back then. And so that I was informed about. But the one that I actually got a piece of mail was from Stanford. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
In that, it exists somewhere in an old album, the kind where you peel back the paper and stick something in there and then put it back.
Zero.
That letter is in there.
Blockbuster?
I don't know.
Yeah, you take it to the Blockbuster store and put it.
Office Max? I don't know.
Also, Blockbuster is only just in the last couple of years. Like, I think there's one more store in the whole country.
Still kicking.
Yeah.
Is that like, do you have that, or that's like?
Do you not remember Blockbuster?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Blockbuster.
It was like an older, like different kind of store.
Yeah. So okay,
they had, like, what do they have? They were like 8 tracks and radio antennas.
No, it was
the Radio Shack.
All they had
like a Radio Shack
at the time was VHS and Beta.
What's Beta?
Don't know what that is.
I know what VHS is.
I know what that is. Yeah.
What's a Beta?
That's going to turn into
a technology class.
Here.
What is Beta?
So basically, you have Beta tapes and VHS. VHS are the VHS that you know.
Mm-hmm.
Betas were the same thing, but they were smaller.
Oh.
They were smaller.
Almost like a cassette.
They were the actual tape and the reels were smaller. Mm-hmm. I think what's VHS 65 millimeter, whatever the size tape is in a VHS. Mm-hmm. The Betas were smaller.
Okay.
And so they had Beta machines. They had VCR machines. VCR would play the regular ones that we know. Beta machines would play the Betas. Betas came first.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. I would have thought like VHS was the first and cassette.
You do know what 8 tracks and stuff are? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I maybe ever saw maybe one of them ever.
That's we had our first cars that we used to have, and our parents had.
Yeah.
Is radio dials with an 8-track. You were fancy if your car had an 8-track
player.
Yeah.
Player.
My dad talks about that too.
That's not so old. Like I remember, some of my friends had cars that had an 8-track, and they would get like an 8-track aux, and so they could use the 8-track as a port for their phones.
And cassette. That cassette was like that for. Or maybe my first car had cassette auxiliary.
Yeah, you like had there was a little fake cassette with a cord that came out of it.
Yes,
plugged it in it.
Our kids are gonna have no clue what we're talking about.
I can barely describe it.
The technology advancement just in your lifetime, and even in ours, I remember what it was like not to have internet. Mm-hmm. Like that's foreign to the new, the Gen Zs Interesting.
So your junior year of football didn't go so well because the coach was stupid, but you had a potential future, and so you chose to go to a different high school so that you could have a shot at showing your talent to scouts and stuff. I'm assuming was the thought process.
Was it in the same conference? Was it like no somewhere else? So I wanted to know if you went back there and
when you're transferring
scored 20 points on them.
Yeah, when you're transferring high schools, it's pretty serious. That must have been a pretty.
Yeah, I left.
Those schools take their athletics seriously if you're transferring high schools to play.
Right.
Not like transferring college. Transferring a high school seems...
That very same year, my junior year, I left. So I don't know can't remember if they do it here. So our high school was 4 quarters.
Yeah.
They split the year up in 4 quarters.
Yep, we did that, yeah.
So when football was over, at the end of the 3rd quarter is when I left. So I went to the new school and finished out the 4th quarter of my junior year at that school, mainly because I wanted to get to know the coach and I wanted to get to know the guys, and then summer camps, training camps, whatever we did during the summer, so that when our senior year came, I was,
gelled.
Integrated.
Yep.
Totally didn't work out that way for circumstances that were out of my control, but it turns out. Another long story short, it turns out that high school that I went to, that was the last year of that high school. It was shutting down and a new one was being built a couple miles away in the same town. And we were supposed to have brand new school, brand new stadium. And then our coaches all got let go. And they brought in, ironically, a coaching staff from my former league that I was down Simi Valley.
I thought you were going to say they brought in the old coach.
No.
And then I transferred again.
One of our conference rivals, Newberry Park, they brought in their coaching staff, and they came in and said, this is gone. Mm-hmm. We had pukey yellow and green uniforms. He said, we're going to look like the Green Bay Packers. We're going to have gold, except we're going to have the M instead of the G. And he said, all new offense, all new defense. We got little time to learn a lot.
Which probably would have been good for you, right? Because
that was great for me. The problem was I was the new guy.
Okay.
And trying to fit in with the current team, those guys had played together all 4 years. They didn't want an outsider coming in. And the even bigger problem about the outsider coming in was I wasn't just a pushover. I was good.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I beat out the starting running back. That was the running back for prior 3 years. And so
bad blood.
It was to the point where I kind of had to watch my back.
Yeah.
Because they were just that way. And then, but then the season started, and when we started winning, it just all went away.
Isn't that funny?
Even though the guy that I beat out, even though he did get playing time, but I got more playing time, he was still, but everybody else came around, and we ended up going 9-1. And which was really neat. New school. The only thing we didn't have is we had to go back to the old school to play on that football field because they didn't have the stadium done yet. But we had the school, the classrooms, all that, and the new uniforms. And we really did. It looked just like the Green Bay Packers down to the stripe, but our helmets had an M. We were Moore Park Musketeers. First play from scrimmage, first game of the season, the guy muffed the kickoff, and he kept fumbling around, and he got down on the 1 yard line. So we started out in the backfield in the end zone. We did a 26 power, and I ran 99 yards for a touchdown. That's how the season started.
Oh, your guy
right off the edge.
Your guy muffed
it. We started out on the 1 yard line.
And the
so
first
I
play,
started
99,
out in the end zone.
And then everybody on your team was like, I like him now.
I always felt that I mean, it's not impossible. It happens.
Yeah.
But I always felt that was one big thing that kind of it opened everybody's eyes to see, okay, well, the line just blocked. Handoff, the guys weren't nervous. Weren't nervous because we were in their own end zone. And he just ran all the way and just outran everybody for a touchdown. So I think that had a lot to do. It opened people's eyes and said, hey, we might have something here. And then things just kept going well. And we had a passing game. We had a running game. And, but it was rough to start. It was very rough to start and being the new guy. But I did well my senior year. But the problem was I had that nagging back injury from my sophomore year. It never left me. I remember going to being in school. I couldn't sit in my chair in the classroom. I had to get up outside. The only thing that would make it, the only thing that would make that when it wouldn't hurt, if I was standing, it hurt. If I was sitting, it didn't hurt. Then it got to the point where it started hurting when I was sitting. There was nothing I could do to relieve it, and it was just driving me nuts. So I went to the doctor, and basically I had a compressed disc in my lumbar, and it just
that's it.
I wasn't going to be able to. Back then, even nowadays, there's not the technology to really fix somebody's spine enough to go out there and play professional football. So I had to start looking in other directions, but. Football was the sport. Track and field honed in my speed and my agility, and high jump helped with, the things that high jump helps with, your jumping and your steps and your timing,
hamstrings and explosiveness.
What was like your PR in the high jump? Do you remember?
6'6". Oh, yeah. One time I ever did 6'6".
That's pretty high.
We used to go I did 6'5" a few times. Usually go in 2-inch increments until you get up high, then you start doing one.
Yep.
I was at an invitational, and I don't know if it was adrenaline or what, but this guy and I were going at it, and I don't know how I did it, but I did he ended up beating me. He ended up doing he did 6'8" and then stopped because there was nobody else. We both cleared 6'6", and I couldn't do 6'8", but I did 6'5" a few times. 6'4" was like always. I always get to 6'4", but I wouldn't start jumping because in that league they started at 5 feet.
Yeah, I
wouldn't start jumping until 5'10". Oh, so I just wait.
Yeah, I remember those guys. Like I also high jumped in high school, and I stunk. I did not get this. Whatever gene that you had, I did not get. I never cleared 6 foot. But I remember there were guys that they didn't jump at our level. They waited to jump the big ones. Which for us wouldn't have been.
Well, for me,
there's one or two guys that could jump that where we from around where we were from. But yeah.
The reason I did it was twofold. One, the more you jump, the more tired you get.
Yeah.
High jump usually started just before the 100 meters. I would have to leave high jump and go do the 100 meters and then come back, and I would be 400 meter relay would already be done. So I already have that under my belt. Have to leave to go do the 100. Now I got that under my belt. So my legs and everything, I'd be out there. Luckily, we were fortunate enough to have a personal trainer that would
keep you limber.
But depending on how long the high jump event, it sometimes would run into the 200.
Okay.
So I'd say about half the time I was done with the high jump and I'd go do the 200. The other half the time we were at the end of the high jump, but I was still in it, doing it. And I had to go leave and go do the 200 and then come back. I was spent.
Right.
And so your legs feel like jello and you can't jump anymore.
No
so,
spring, yeah.
But in league, honestly, I usually, if I get to, it's like, you know what? I start at 5'10", and when I started, there was nobody left but maybe one person. And then they were out. Next thing you know, I was by myself. So when I was fresh, I'd say, just please put it to 6'4", just so I can do 6'4". I'd do 6'4", and I'd stop. Because that would win for the team.
That is interesting. There's like in the sports where certain runs count, like building up to that run. I always think of powerlifters or CrossFit games, whatever, when they're doing like for PRs to see who can lift the most. Like if you burn out too early, like if you're going against a guy who did 6'8" and you do 6'2", 6'4", by the time you get to the higher ones, like you lose your peak athleticism there. That's like a game within the game.
And I was definitely tired when I did that. And he said, okay, do you guys want to go to 6? I was like, it doesn't matter to me. Leave it up to him. And of course he's like 6'8".
And you're like, yeah.
I knew that I was, I just did 6'6", so it was a possibility, but I could feel my legs. They were kind of, and this was an invitational? I think it was an invitational. So I didn't have all the events. Yeah, I did. I was invited for my 3 events, the high jump, 100, 200, and we were invited for the 400 meter relay. So I did do all of them, and so it wasn't any different than any other meet. But
what seasons were those? Is track and field in the spring?
Yes.
Okay, so it was kind of like giving you in shape for football in the summer, and then ramping up. Okay. A lot of people do that. They'll play multiple sports, but it's because they want to be in shape for their best sport.
Yep, that was my theory doing it, and I just didn't take it seriously. I wish I'd have played golf because golf was a spring sport. I wish I would have done golf in high school. Yeah, seriously. I hated track, couldn't stand it. Yeah, and that my theory was it'll keep me in shape for football, but I never took it seriously enough for it to actually do anything. I was in shape because I was young. That's all. I didn't go past that point. I wish I would have done something that I enjoyed more, like golf or something. But of course, I like lacrosse and didn't have that anymore. So. Real quick, what was your putting in a spot? Do you remember your PR in the 100 meter?
The fastest I ran the 100 meters was 10.3.
Yeah, that's super fast.
Where did that rank in the state at the time? What were the guys that were winning the state? What were they running?
10.3, 10.2,
10.3, and you ran at 10.1. What'd you say?
10.3. I was right there with them.
Yeah. Do you remember? Kidding. Did you ever run against anybody that went far, professionally?
There is a gentleman who is obviously he's my age now, so he's retired. But his name was Devon Green, and he was on the U.S. Olympic team, and he's got some medals. Nice. If you look back at the history of track and field, you'll see.
There's you right.
We went to high school together
in the pictures. There's you right next to him in the pictures. Yeah, that's so fast. I'm just highlighting how much you left on the table for me. You could have given me a little bit more of that athletic ability. It just did not pass. But I got a quarter of it. It feels like I was never fast. That's about it. Just wasn't fast. Couldn't jump very high. But it's all right.
Well,
I did the best with what I had.
I can't blame your mother because she was pretty athletic herself.
Yeah, but I wasn't fast.
But she wasn't. She wasn't fast.
Okay. Yeah. I got it from mom's side. That's right.
Yeah, that was. And I 10.3. That's in my mind, but honestly, I don't remember. I want to say I think 200 meters. 20.98 rings a bell.
That's so fast.
And then 400 meter relay.
I don't want to know.
It's like 45 something,
Holy
46.
moly. That's incredibly fast. That is like
That's so far.
That is incredibly fast. Yeah.
And during my time doing track and field, you know, I can remember the guys' faces. I can remember their names. We were flipping fast.
Yeah.
Greg Ware, Carrillo, me, Swenson,
Shout out.
Kearns, Mike and Steve, just Matt Brill, just like the wind. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was always anchor. We each had and some of them were faster than me. It always depended on the day. Mm-hmm. If I ran against somebody and I was out ahead, I always get my worst times. If I had somebody right there neck and neck with me, is when you had your best times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I was always anchor, and everybody was used to their positions, and we practiced so much. We were flawless with our handoffs. We were always in that zone. It was just like, and there was no, you know, delay or wait, slow down, this or that. We were just always right on. But don't know where a lot of those guys ended up. I know Devin Green, where he ended up, but just world-class speed.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well,
But you have a lot of that comes out of, I mean, it's California.
Yeah, that area.
You know, California does their track and field and their football. It's pretty, you know, between Texas, Florida, and California, I would have to say Texas takes their football most serious, but California is not too far behind. And, so that's good memories.
Yeah, I always loved hearing those stories whenever we'd hear them growing up. So it's pretty cool. Real quick before we move on to the early adult decision to join the Army, favorite football movie ever?
Ooh.
Or best. You can take it another step further.
Best football movie ever?
What is the best football movie ever?
Gosh, I wish you would have just left it at best movie ever. That's easy.
Forrest Gump?
No,
Top
that's
Gun?
a good movie.
Top Gun?
Top Gun. Which one? Obviously not the new one. Yeah.
Which one?
The original. My two favorite movies is Top Gun, and I have to say Top Gun Maverick. Once we finally got to watch it, it wasn't too bad.
See?
But Top Gun and the Back to the Future series are my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, Nick's a big Back to the Future guy.
We had all those on VCR growing up, so we watched them a lot.
Football.
Good memories.
You know, I don't.
There's one answer. No pressure.
I don't.
There is a correct answer.
I already know your answer.
Yeah, there is a correct answer. I'm looking for the right answer.
But you know, I'm probably going to get it wrong because I'm not really into watching.
I feel like you might get it right.
I like most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Between Friday night, you know, I would have to say, what's the one? The Kurt Warner one is good. It's a heartwarming story.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's recent. That's the recent one.
Yeah, more recent. The greatest. What is it? The greatest game, or was that like a play on words with the greatest show on turf? What would they call that?
Yeah, we'll have to look it up. What's the Kurt Warner?
Yeah,
that was
called the Kurt Warner movie.
The greatest game.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that was just released in like the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, a few years ago.
Not that old.
But that's not the right answer, though.
I know a lot of people would say, Notre Dame?
Rudy?
Awful. But I would have to say the one that I enjoyed the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know the title of it. Not Friday Night Lights. What's the other one? Permian.
Oh, yeah, that's Friday Night Lights. That's Friday Night Lights.
The movie.
Yeah.
Not
the movie, not the show.
Not the show.
No, the show's garbage. The movie.
Yeah, where they lose
Friday
in the
Nights.
end.
Yep.
Yeah, that one.
Spoiler.
Yep. Kind of see it coming. Yeah. They kind of. Yeah, if you're paying attention, like you kind of see it coming.
But to tell you the truth,
I've never seen it, so thanks, guys.
I enjoy Remember the Titans. I think that's an awesome movie.
Paul Puddington's. That's
a go for a lot of people. A lot of people. It's Remember the Titans, but it's not the right answer.
And another one, just that's
number two.
Kind of odd. And I remember when the strike happened, the Replacements.
Oh, that's a good one. That's the best football comedy.
I actually remember that year. And
Longest Yard Replacements.
We're gonna have football.
Yep.
I know that
Shane Falco.
I know that I know that the Adam Sandler version,
The Longest Yard, is
cool.
Right, it's between The Longest Yard and The Replacements.
The original one with Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
For me, I would have to say because that's the original.
Yep.
You must have been stoked when he came into the newer one. You're like, there he is.
Yeah, he was a running back.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so you got to pick one though. Best football movie ever. You were on the right track. You were
Don't
so close.
let him influence you. You just make your own decision.
This is going to be a total guess because I enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed a lot of those that we talked about. I would have to say, Remember the Titans ekes it out.
Yeah,
I agree.
That is the.
And I've never seen Friday Night Lights.
But what is your
opinion?
But what is your favorite? Like, what's in your opinion? Is that your opinion? Or you're saying that's the right answer? Because I'm saying right
the one
answer.
I enjoyed the most.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's a good one. It's number 2. Friday Night Lights is the answer we were looking for. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Well, that's the Permian. Where Permian they play Permian plays.
Permian Panthers. Yep.
That initially was it, but then when I remember the Titans, they're kind of neck and neck. But
yeah, Remember the Titans is everyone's favorite. Technically, Remember the Titans is the correct answer.
Yeah, maybe they can be like 1A, 1B.
Yeah,
Remember the Titans is like iconic.
Yeah, it is super iconic.
It is.
And
I think they did a good job with that. You know, some football movies are kind of hard to watch because cinematography isn't quite right. Where you don't feel like
guys
football's...
that don't. The quarterback throws a football like he's left-handed, like it's
Where Remember the Titans did not and like the camera angles, and then like you're in. Yeah, they did a great job with that.
Yeah,
and the acting was so good.
What I love about Friday Night Lights is it's like this dramatized, realistic view of like the pressure on the players at that level of football and what it does to them. And yeah, I just think, and then in the end, they have to deal with a lot of them didn't get scholarships, and it's their last year. One of them had a career-ending injury, and like they have to deal with like we just lost, and now we're all going to go on with our life in this town that
only cares about
makes
football.
no money and only cares about football. And what do they do now? Like, I don't know. I just like the drama of it and the realistic take on
Texas. There's a lot of Texas. It's that way.
Yeah. And they were in the movie. They're like a quintuple A school. Like it's a big deal. Yeah. Anyway, that's
best in the country.
But yeah, Remember the Titans is it's in the top 5.
I like the storyline from Remember the Titans. I like how you've got your segregation in there and your racism and how they
fix it and how they solve that.
They equate the.
I really like the segregation. I really like the racism. We knew what you meant. We just went
how they solved all those problems.
But how the storyline is based on the team coming together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then the town,
and how the town learns from that.
Yeah. What side? Strong side. Yeah, everybody loves that.
Yeah. So that's not that it happened that way, but
Julius and Bertier.
It's I just thought that was cool how it did that, but
all right, you can have that.
I agree with you, by the way. So Nick's opinion doesn't matter.
There are too many.
I actually haven't seen all of Friday Night Lights, though. So
have you heard?
At least I know how it ends now. Thanks, guys.
Any Given Sunday. That's the one I'm thinking.
Oh, that one's like the rated. That's like the best rated R football movie.
Every time I think of Friday Night Lights, for some reason, Al Pacino pops into my head, and
right, they're easily confused.
What's his name? Jamie Foxx pops into my head. Yep. I'm like, no, that's, and I can never think of the title. That's
James Woods. Yeah,
that's Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, is that that's the one with the guy that's like on steroids and he's like psycho crazy guy? That's Any Given Sunday, right? Or no, that's Any Given Sunday is about professional football. The one with the guy that like has the skull paint. That's a college. Like what is that? That's another one.
That was like it would be what the equivalent to like UFL or Arena.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Arena.
I can't remember that one.
But for the movie, that was the professional football league.
Okay.
I can't believe you guys didn't put Waterboy in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah, Waterboy's up there for sure.
They couldn't use
that's like
the actual names and stuff. So it was all the different names. That's a funny movie, too.
Yeah, so like best football movies has to be like in categories.
Yeah,
because like you're not going to put comedies with the
general family and then
like realism too.
Yeah, and then like rated R. There's some rough ones out there, but yeah, there are a lot of football movies. Rudy, have you heard that Rudy is like, it's based on a true story, but it's like very, very, very loosely based on a true story. Like pretty much not really a true story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Joe Montana was on that team, and he came out and said like none of that happened.
Dark horse one, Invincible.
Oh yeah, with Vince Papale, that's a good one. Yeah, just like that's really a true story, right?
Yeah,
that's a very good one. Yeah.
That one's not so much even like the football; it's more like
It's like the real life kind of stuff.
Yeah, which I kind of like that too.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of game footage.
Yeah.
It's a lot of practice and what his life was like, and kind of like that too.
That is a really good one. Too bad it's about the Eagles, though. Man,
I know.
So I'm gonna do this on air. I'm changing my number one because I just thought of it.
To Friday Night Lights. Okay.
And I can't remember. I can't believe that I didn't think of this.
Wait,
I would
wait,
have to
wait,
say.
wait,
Wait,
me
so
guess,
it's
let me
not
guess,
one
let me
we
guess,
it's not
let me
one we've
guess.
said so far. It is.
No,
Okay, let me guess. Let me think real quick.
can't believe I didn't think of this. This is
I'm
actually
gonna probably
my
feel the
favorite one.
same. I'm probably gonna feel the same. I feel like I should know,
Yeah,
What you're-
if there's a favorite, we shouldn't be missing it,
I will
right?
I'll give you a hint.
unless it's very niche.
It is totally based off of a true story, a true tragic story.
I know what it is. I know what it is.
Facing the Giants?
Yeah. No, it's tragic. Yeah, you said tragedy. I know what it is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah. When you're ready, I'm ready. Whenever you're
Little Giants?
ready. Facing the Giants is, that's a rough one.
Yeah, that's
a rough
hard
one.
one to put in there.
What is it?
We are Marshall.
Yeah. It's the Thunder.
We Are
Bird.
Marshall.
We Are Marshall. Yep.
Very,
Yeah.
very good movie.
That one's good.
Is that what you had thought?
Yeah.
That he said?
Well, when he said tragic,
Tragic.
I knew immediately.
Yeah.
I hadn't guessed it until that point.
You know, a lot of people don't know is that. Oh, geez, I'm going to forget my names.
Bobby
Bowden.
Yep.
Bobby Bowden used to coach before he went to the state of Florida. He used to coach the West Virginia Mountaineers. And so when the Marshall coaches went to him to learn how to run the veer,
Right, yeah, that's a big
and
part of the movie.
Yeah.
he said, "Here you go, boys, have at it." So if you've seen the movie, you know that's very close to kind of how it happened. He was very gracious about that and let them do that. But Bobby Bowden used to coach West Virginia Mountaineers back in the day, and before he went, did his Florida thing. But
Florida State, right? Yep.
Florida State, yeah.
That was him.
That was
Okay.
him. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good one.
That's a hard movie
Yeah,
to watch.
There are.
That's
that
emotional for sure. That is another movie. It's a lot about the backstory, and then the play is kind of intermingled. Where I feel like some of the others,
More football focused, yeah.
like the season of Remember the Titans is like what they focus on, like how they went. There's some of like the off the field stuff, but there's a lot of very good cinematography on field that like draws you in.
Yeah.
Like you can feel the hits.
Yeah. Yep.
Hockey movies do that. Some of them, like
Oh, yeah.
Miracle on Ice does that.
Right.
You're like, I'm in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
that's
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like some of them really get you into like the action. What's the little Angels in the Outfield is people's favorite, like, you know, one of the top 5 baseball movies of all time, just from childhood nostalgia. A lot of people don't know there's an Angels in the End Zone.
yeah, there is.
Yep. We had that on video. I remember watching that a lot. Angels in the End Zone. Yeah. I think it post-dated the Angels in the Outfield. They were like, oh, that worked. Let's do it again with a different sport. And it wasn't as famous, but like, I know.
Yeah.
Angels in the End Zone.
Yeah. Baseball's a hard one to do.
Yeah.
Like you got, like the Rookie.
Oh, yeah. There are some
with Dennis
iconic
Quaid.
baseball ones. Yep. True story, right?
Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. That's the one with the kid, right?
Yeah,
The kid who like breaks his arm. Yeah.
Henry Rolling Gardner.
Yep. Yep.
Garden
Also
hoser.
based on a true story.
And is the rookie with
Dennis
Dennis
Quaid,
Quaid.
when
Yep.
he's like the older
No, not Dennis
chemistry
Quaid.
teacher.
Yeah. Something like that.
Robert Redford.
Huh?
The rookie is Robert Redford.
Was it a remake? Was it an older movie or something? Oh, Robert Redford.
Field of Dreams is obviously
Yeah, Field of Dreams. Yeah,
most
is the
baseball
number one.
people are like
That's the good.
Field of Dreams.
Kevin Costner. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. He's in like 5 baseball movies, isn't he?
Yep. Black Sox what is that called?
Sandlot.
8 Men Out. 8 Men Out about the natural. The natural. That's also
Dennis Quaid is the rookie. The Sandlot.
Sandlot.
That's up there, top 5.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's some good ones.
Yep. Legends Never
The
Die.
Natural when he hits 61. Yeah, there's definitely some good ones. 8 Men Out is about the Black Sox when they threw the World Series.
I have no idea.
You should watch that.
When they threw the World Series?
Yeah, like Shoeless Joe Jackson and
Well, it's like a protest.
Buck Weaver. No, like they bet against themselves and they all got banned from the MLB. And
Oh, I've never heard of that.
the Kaminsky's White Sox. It's a good movie. You should watch that.
Interesting. Yeah, never heard
Anybody
of that.
listening,
Even that
go watch it.
Scandal or anything. They should make a movie like
Anyway.
that.
I just had to throw my baseball stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I'm not a baseball player, but like, yeah, you cannot deny baseball movies are like, it's baseball movies and football movies.
Yeah. Basketball movies.
Basketball
has some good ones.
There are some iconic basketball movies. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep. But I feel like there's way more baseball movies are just like,
what's the one similar kind of thing with what you were talking about with the, with Remember the Titans?
Oh, that was,
Glory Road.
Glory Road. Yep.
That's a favorite for sure.
Yeah, that one's
gotta be up there. But everybody like Hoosiers. Everybody loves Hoosiers.
Yeah, Hoosiers is the original.
Yeah,
the original GOAT.
Anyways,
then they came out with so many more after that. It's like, yeah, they're all good. Yep. Was it? I think. Honestly, I like a good golf movie.
Yeah.
Tin Cup's a good movie. What's the one with the Shia LaBeouf, the amateur golfer that like that's a true story. He like makes it.
Oh,
it's a legit
Will
true story.
Smith in that one?
No, that's a different one.
Oh, okay.
That's a different one. No, there's one about the an amateur golfer who was a caddy, and he got seen playing, and he got invited to play this amateur tournament. He like won the tournament, whatever. Got invited to play the British Open or something, and he won.
Whoa!
And like, yeah, and he didn't end up doing a whole lot more than that in his career, but that's a really good one.
You know they're making a Happy Gilmore too.
It's called The Greatest Game Ever Played.
Talk about realistic golf movies like Happy Gilmore.
Right.
Classic.
Oh yeah, that's up there. Like
I hate that clown.
Yeah. What did you say they're coming out with?
They're coming out with the second one.
Happy
Gilmore 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's coming out like I think soon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Top Gun 3.
We'll see. Yeah, Top Gun 3.
Yeah. So that would be like another. Okay. So getting back to one of the on my list of things that some of my favorite memories as a kid is loving all of the same movies that you loved, and like Happy Gilmore is like right up there. Like probably shouldn't have let us watch that movie as young as we did, but it's not that you guys weren't like not strict with movies. I remember that there were some movies that like you didn't let us watch. Like weird memory, but I remember wanting to watch the Titanic for like when I was a kid, and like you would not let me. Like it was always like, no, not yet. Like I wasn't, whatever. I was too young, I guess. So just a disclaimer. You guys didn't just let me watch whatever I wanted. But Happy Gilmore was like, yeah. For a long time, that was the funniest movie I had ever seen. Like,
because your dad lets you, not your mother.
Yeah, probably. Yep, man. Like
when it comes on TV,
yeah,
I'm flipping through the channels and I stop it. I watch it.
I
don't know how many times.
Right. Yeah. You don't turn away. That one's a must watch anytime it's on for sure. Yeah. So I remember like a lot of that stuff growing up. Some of the jokes that you would tell us that were not school age appropriate. That's another good memory. Oh man. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So I would like to maybe delve a little bit into your 22-year career in the Army. Yeah, just that's kind of a like obviously like I know you as my dad. Like I know you as like the person who is at home. Like, but I didn't go to work with you, and I didn't get to really see you a whole lot in that capacity. Now that I'm a little older, I can kind of appreciate. Like I'm curious. Like, and I think that for even obviously like just outside this podcast too. Like I imagine that there's a lot more that I'll learn about you, and I'll have natural curiosity and questions and stuff but like just for the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes that we have, I would love to just kind of learn a little bit about what work was like for you and who you were in that capacity. Just because I think it's natural that as we get older, we find our parents more interesting in that way, right? It's pretty normal, I would say. Yeah. So, first of all, I would love to know what made you want to join the Army. Was it like, what was it like? For some people, it's a last resort. For some people, they always wanted to do it. For some people, it's yeah, I could do that. And it's like any other career decision. Like what was it for you?
Well, knowing that I wanted to marry your mother, I knew that, if I remember correctly at the time, I was having a hard time holding down a job. Your grandparents, they raised me to be respectful. They raised me to be honest. They raised me to have integrity, to be a leader, to be honest. So I already had that instilled in me. However, for some reason, as I was going through my teenage years and trying to hold down jobs, I really didn't like being told what to do. I always felt like, you know, I got hired for a certain job and I interviewed and was told this is what I'd be doing. And 9 times out of 10, that's not what I ended up doing. Mm-hmm. And so part of that was, well, you know what? I want a profession. Now, remember, back when I joined, we were in what's considered a Cold War area period. The last war we had was Vietnam, which had ended in 75. So 76 all the way to the Gulf War was considered a Cold War peace period. Mm-hmm. And really there was no incentives. There was nothing. You literally, when you hear people talk about the old recruiter down at the end of the strip mall, it's true. That's where they were. And they weren't recruiting. You had to go see them. And for reasons of thinking about marrying your mother and knowing about the benefits mm-hmm. that the Army provides married personnel, and that I needed to have a job, and I really wanted, it was the Army, but I wanted a profession. I didn't want to be I'm not going to say soldier, because we're all soldiers first, and then we have our professions. Mm-hmm. And it goes from the gamut of you're a soldier, infantry, carry a rifle, shoot to kill, mm-hmm. to a supplies tech. You hand out supplies and do requisitions and do that, and everything in between, medical field, logistics, you know, and you have your warrior type fields and you have your support fields. So I knew as much that I wanted to find a career. So I took the modern day version of ASVAB test. Back then it was called something else. I scored really high. And so I basically had my choice of whatever. And knowing that I wanted to come out because I only plan on being in the Army for a few years, I wanted to come out of it with a potential career. So no infantry, no armor, no CAD, none of that combat stuff. I wanted to be in, so I was watching back then VHS videos and a little TV with a built-in VHS player. And yep. I'm watching all this stuff, and I was like, medical, And I made the decision that I wanted to go into the medical field. I qualified for it as far as my scores. Mm-hmm. And so
just kind of happened naturally after that.
Happened. I said, yep, I'll do that. And I selected, it was called at the time, healthcare specialist. But in the Army, they have what's called MOSs. Everything's an acronym in the Army.
Right.
So MOS is military occupational specialty, and it's a number followed by a letter. So when I joined, I was a 91 Alpha, and all that designated was healthcare specialist. Although
just as many letters and words as healthcare specialists,
and then you have to explain what it is, which takes even longer.
Yeah. Although
efficiency,
okay. All the medical fields, whether it was healthcare specialist, ortho, physical therapy, all the pharmacy, X-ray, they were all 91 series, 91
right,
something.
Yeah. That makes sense.
For me, it was a 91 Alpha. It was a healthcare specialist. But what it really meant was that if I went to boot camp and I graduated boot camp, go to medical school in Fort Sam, the academy. If I pass that and I go to my first unit, I'm going to be that particular MOS. I could be in a combat unit as a combat medic or a field medic. You're not a combat medic unless you've gone to combat. Or I have the opportunity to maybe be in a clinic somewhere. So various things that I could do. Yeah. So I decided that I wanted to join the medical field, and I did it as a 91 Alpha, and I was accepted. And
yeah, But
those are the reasons. One, because I wanted a career. I wanted to come out of it with a career. Never intended on spending.
Right. That was kind of your long term.
Yeah.
It was. I ended up my enlistment contract. My initial enlistment contract ended up being for 2 years. A lot of people don't know that when you sign up for the armed forces, a lot of this stuff is for the other branches, but I'll speak for the Army. When you join, you have an 8-year commitment. Now, how you spend that 8 years, Depends on you. You can do a full 8 years active duty, or you can do 2 years active duty, 2 years of inactive duty, 4 years of reserve. There's all kinds of things at that time that you could do. My contract was for 2-2-4, 2 active, 2 reserve, 4 inactive. So
what does the inactive look like? Just briefly, roughly.
So active duty, that's your job every day, 9 to 5 or whatever. Reserve is you're a civilian, but you go and you do your 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer with your reserve unit to keep trained up. And then if there's something going on in the world, they can activate you to active duty, your reserve unit to go. Inactive is the same thing, but you don't train like the reserves do. You don't do it 1 weekend a month and then 2 weeks in the summer.
Like
you're just in an inactive status. If you get activated, if they have to dig deep and go to the inactive, you've got to go through a whole bunch of training before you actually go on federal orders.
Yep. Is that even a thing anymore?
So you're batting third.
It kind of keeps you in like a box if they need you.
Yeah.
So no, they actually don't. They don't anymore.
Is that because there's always a need now, or because?
Well, now they should. Because they're having a hard time now. The problem with the armed forces, I'll speak for the Army, the problem that they're having is recruiting and retention. Okay. They're having a hard time getting people in, and they're having a hard time retaining them. So it's always like this. You have a high number of people, and then you have your lows, and it all depends on what's going on. In history has shown we have some kind of a war every 10 years, 10, 15 years. So you bulk up, ready for a war. When the war is over, you slim down, and then of course everything that's going on in the world right now, who knows?
Yeah.
But the two, so your mother and wanting to have some kind of a career out of it is the main reasons why I went in. Some people go in for the college money, which back then was back then it was a big deal. It was just a flat $25,000 Montgomery GI Bill. What they have now with the post 9/11 GI Bill is huge. It's huge. It's like leaps and bounds from what it used to be. Basically, you spend 3 years in, a minimum of 3 years in, you qualify for the post 9/11 GI Bill. Long story short, that's enough education benefits. It's going to get you through a bachelor's degree.
Wow, which is
free.
Really valuable nowadays, especially how expensive school is.
So it's leaps and bounds from the old Montgomery GI Bill. But back then, it was the Montgomery GI Bill. And there was, some people did it because they just had nothing else to do, or they wanted to travel the world. Back when I joined, it was education or traveling the world. So there was no cause. Like 9/11 happened. Right. A very unfortunate thing in our history. And what did a lot of people do, young men and women?
Joined up.
They joined up they wanted to be part of that response. Back in the 80s, that peacetime area, there was nothing.
Yeah.
You joined for either travel in the world, education, or just to see what it was like. I was for a career, a field, and knowing that I wanted to marry your mother, I knew that once I was in, we got married, and then if kids came along,
you're set.
We've got health care.
Yep.
We've got a roof over it. We've got everything.
Yep.
You're under that military umbrella. So those were the two main reasons.
Yeah, security. Yeah.
Okay. So then a lot changed, right? Like that, the reasons why people enlisted changed quickly after you started your military career.
Not too long after I joined, the Gulf War kicked off, and that was the next war after Vietnam, 15 years later. Oh, no, 75, 85. Yeah, 15 years after the end of the Vietnam War. But for me personally, the way it ended up being was after my first 2 years, I hadn't even hit boot camp yet. I went to what they called a reception station. They weren't ready for me at boot camp, so I went to a place called a reception station. That's where they cut my hair, issued my uniforms, did all that stuff. We learned about guard duty and some of the basics. While my 2 or 3 day stay there, I got called to the administrative office. Now, I know what it all is now, but back then I was a newbie. I wasn't even in boot camp yet, so I didn't know what was going on. They just called me there, so I went. They sat me down. They said, here's the deal. So your enlistment contract right now for active duty is it's 224. Active duty is 2 years. We've got 10 slots for Korea. We've got 10 slots for Germany.
Those were your options?
Germany's already filled up.
Okay.
We're sending you to Korea.
Oh.
But if you extend your current 2-year enlistment to 3 years, we'll send you to Germany.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
In my naive mind, all I could think of is I knew nothing about Korea. All I could think about, I didn't even think I knew what third world meant. Mm-hmm. But I thought that if I went to Korea, I would end up dying of some disease or I would not make it back. I didn't know. That's all I thought, being very naive.
How old were you at the time?
18.
So they're sitting an 18-year-old in front of them and being like, Germany's filled. But if you want to do this longer term, then all of a sudden we'll add a couple spots. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
and you were 18 and you're like,
back then, if
great.
I was now, I would say to them, my now, well, actually, yesterday, 2 days ago was my 14th anniversary of my retirement date from the Army. Oh, I retired on April 27th of 2011. So, yes, I am kind of far removed, although after the military for 12 years I worked with veterans, and now I'm on Fort Drum. I still kind of know what's going on, but as far as the intricate stuff, a lot has changed. But you
would have seen right through that now.
I would have been like, wait a minute, you said you had 10 slots and they're full. So what's this about?
Right. Well, I mean, if you're in just the administrative, whatever it is, I mean, you're just a new guy.
Yep.
Like, you don't have the perspective and you definitely don't have the guts to be like, I'm going to make the decisions here. Yeah.
All I knew is Germany sounded a lot better than Korea.
And what was the rank sitting across the table from you? Yeah.
It was either E78, Sergeant First Class, Master Sergeant.
Right. So you weren't going to be like, here's where I want to go, actually.
No. I said, I'll take Germany.
Yeah.
So when that session was done, my 2-year enlistment became 3.
Okay.
Now became 3. So now I was committed to 3 years.
Yeah.
But everything is, a good story, a lengthy story, so I'll make it short. But what I did in my first 10 years, just to give myself options, was instead of just saying, sign me up for the duration. While I could, my first ended up being 3. At the end of that 3 years, you hit a window, like a 90-day window where you have to re-enlist or say goodbye. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and re-enlisted for another 2 years. And then I was about ready to be a non-commissioned officer, be a leader. So I was like, okay, I did another 2 years. And I re-enlisted like 5 times and just did it for short stints. And I would have done that as long as I could have. But then around 2000, the Army had a new program called the indefinite. If you're at the 10-year mark, you can't re-enlist anymore. You either say bye-bye or you re-enlist and your ID card says indefinite, which means you're indefinite to at least 20 years.
Okay.
So I tried to bluff the Army. I said, okay, if I'm going to have to do this, I want that. I lost, and I ended up just re-enlisting, and I was indefinite. So I knew that I was in for the long haul, but it was already halfway to 20, and we always thought that at a minimum I would have a retirement payment. Right. That would be we would at least have a roof over our head because that would be a mortgage payment. So that was my motivation to keep going. But that's kind of how it went down because I was giving myself options, just doing little short 2-year stints until I couldn't anymore. Sure. And then
10 years is kind of a hard, like, do you start over after 10 years? Like doing something else? That's kind of like that's what you feel pretty invested at that point. Yeah. Like
I tried to, I started out as a 91 Alpha. Well, the Army changed that military occupational specialty numerous times. It went from a 91 Alpha, it changed to 91 Bravo, which means nothing. It just changed to 91 Bravo. And then it changed to 91 Whiskey around 2000. And all that meant was they were requiring more from us, meaning no longer did we just have to stay proficient in our Army skills. They wanted us to be proficient as a certified EMT. So we had to do a lot of other stuff in order to stay certified in our military, in our MOS. And So that's where I was able to do EMT basics, did, pediatric stuff, adult stuff, all kinds of neat stuff in there. But we had to do it as a 91 whiskey. And then the Army completely restructured, and they assigned the 91 series to some other MOS, and all the medical became 68 series. And I became a 68 whiskey, and I ended up retiring as a 68 whiskey, which means nothing. It's just numbers changing. And but I did several times try to go from being, after the Gulf War, I was a combat medic. And I tried going from combat medic. I tried to get into a specialty medical like orthopedics or physical therapy. I did the schools. I did ortho school. I did physical therapy. I did respiratory therapy. But there was always some reason why I couldn't reclassify. Always something that came up that I got denied for reclassification. So I ended up spending 22 years as a combat medic.
Paul talked about that a little
Sounds
bit
pretty
too.
cool.
Like to get into the specific fields you want, it's like there's so many hurdles, and it just takes one little tweak, and all of a sudden now you're disqualified for that position. I don't know.
Yeah.
So wow, 22 years you said as a combat medic. Okay.
So
I'm sure Nick has a bunch of questions about that.
Yeah, fortunately we don't have enough time to kind of go through it all, but I'm curious, I guess, to kind of hit on some major parts of your life, which is more important today. I got to keep that in perspective, not just about what I want to know. So exactly how long were you enlisted before they sent you overseas?
9 January 90 is my entry date.
Mm-hmm.
And
pretty soon.
I deployed to Iraq on 2 January 91.
So basically, like almost exactly a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I was put after. So you'll hear we refer to it as AIT. It's called Advanced Individual Training. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was medical training, medical school at the Academy of Health Sciences in Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, which is now called Joint Base San Antonio today. And then from there, came home on leave. We got married. I went off to Germany. I started working on getting mom over, but then everything halted because the Gulf War kicked off. And so when I got to Germany, it was my first unit. I was placed in a heavy armor battalion. So here goes my first unit. I'm not going to be in a clinic. I'm not going to be in a hospital. I'm going to be in a combat unit. Basically, M1 Abram tanks. It was a heavy armor unit. And I was placed in a special task force. And that had a mix of all kinds of combat vehicles. And we were actually the first to breach the berm from Kuwait into Iraq. And so my skills and my training, from March, April timeframe of 90 when I got to Germany to the fall, and I was stationed up north in Garlstedt, Germany, which is very, it's just right there by the North Sea, just about. Then over on the wall, there between East and West Germany was the Berlin Brigade. There were only 2 of us over there guarding the northern borders. So the word going around the base there was that we're not going. We have a specific mission. We won't be going to. Yeah. Everyone kept saying that. So much so that, that's another story. But then Thanksgiving evening, 1990, on Thanksgiving evening, I was by myself in my barracks room doing my own thing, listening to music, and we had one channel on TV, Armed Forces Network. The only channel that the antenna.
Is that the one that played Bugs Bunny on Sundays?
Yep. That the rabbit ears would bring in. And AFN News came on, and they were announcing 3 more units deploying to Saudi Arabia, staging area, Kuwait, to go into Iraq to invade. And I can't remember the other 2 units. 2nd Armored Division forward, Garlstedt, Germany.
What was that like?
That was a wild night. A very wild night. That's a story for another time. But basically when that happens, everything gets put on lockdown. Anybody who had orders to go somewhere else, to go back to the United States, to go to wherever.
Canceled.
Anybody that had orders that were getting out of the Army, orders to retire, they call it stop loss. And so it was very wild that night in barracks. It was very crazy in the barracks. And so...
Were people upset? Or
oh, yeah.
It was like an upset thing?
Yeah, because
you felt
we
safe.
we were told at one point that not to worry, we weren't going anywhere.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we are, and it was utter chaos. I remember it took time to get everybody settled down and start focusing on the fact that we were going. And so then there was just the holiday. So that's between graduating Fort Sam in March, April-ish, before I went to Germany, to the end of the 1990, and then deploying in January. And I put my skills to test fast.
No kidding.
And
like pushed right into the deep end.
Yeah. Yep.
Without flotation.
It was
just like, here you go.
It was, and what also made it hard, being new in the Army, I knew as much that my training was going to be put to the. Was hoping not, because at that point you don't know what's going to happen. We're going to be an invading ground force. I could have casualties, I could have nothing. You don't know, but I knew that if we did, my training was going to get to put to use quick. But what made it different, what made it difficult around me, was this is the first time that this generation of people in the Army were going to war since Vietnam. Pretty much everybody from the Vietnam era were retired or out or dead. Right. So at this point, this is a whole new generation of people. And it's the first time the country's going to war in 15 years. So huge logistical, the largest logistical, at the time, the largest logistical movement in our history, moving all the equipment, everything over there. So it was a new atmosphere for everybody. So I didn't really have anybody to look up to that was experienced in it. So I remember coming back a combat medic with my combat medical badge. I was one of very few.
Wow.
It was kind of just because of the era of wars, and I was pretty proud of that. But unfortunately, things have to happen for you to earn a combat medical badge, and people have to be hurt, and you have to render care under fire and all that. But it was a very quick trip to combat. And I went January and came home in about the 1st of June. So it was about 6 months. That's all it took, because we kind of, once the ground war started in February, that's when we went into action. But until then, it was watching the jets and everything do everything. But it was over pretty quick. And then we were back in Germany. So
yeah. So is this you didn't get to see Mom before you left?
No, because everything got halted. Yeah. There was in order to have a family come over to join you, it's called command sponsorship. There's a bunch of stuff that has to happen and paperwork has to be in line. That all got halted. Yeah. She wasn't going and coming anywhere. So that got put off. Well, the problem was once we got back and we uncased everything, because we had everything all secured and tied up, our personal stuff. Once we got back and we started getting going again, miraculously that paperwork was lost. I had to start all over again with the command sponsorship paper. And to boot, by the time I got back, I didn't have enough time left in service for her to come over. Okay. In order for the Army to spend the money to have a family member come over, you got to have at least 24 months left overseas.
A year.
So I actually had to extend another year and start the paperwork over again to have Mom come over.
Okay.
Anything less than 2 years.
It's
2 years.
Crazy. Is it still like that?
You know what? I don't know.
So yeah, kind of thrust right into it.
Thrust right into it pretty quick, and I've got some pretty good stories, internal stories about some of the stuff that I did medically for another time, but we unfortunately did have casualties. I did treat casualties in the back of I drove an armor personnel carrier around. We did have casualties. Once the war was over, we did humanitarian missions. That was probably the worst for me, because when the ceasefire hit, you can imagine from the air and from the ground, there were a lot of unexploded munitions on the ground. And there were a lot of Bedouins in the desert. I mean, this wasn't a modern day type war where you go out and you have a forward operating base that you operate out of and you go. This was a linear battlefield. You moved, shoot, move to an objective. And of course, our objective was Baghdad. So you got a lot of Bedouins that cross your path out there. And these poor little kids were playing with this stuff, and this stuff's blowing up, you know, and we're at checkpoints out there, and they bring them to us. So that was probably the worst for me than the actual, you know, casualties we dealt with as far as soldiers. But I do have to say that with that does come the miracle of life. I did deliver a baby in the back of a 113. You can look up, your listeners can look up what a M113 is. It's an armored personnel carrier. It can be configured in many different ways, especially as a medical vehicle. And one day we were on a humanitarian mission, and we're always surrounded by a perimeter of tanks. So everybody in the middle, the command, medics, maintenance, were all protected, and they were escorting this gentleman in. Carrying his wife, and you know, under rifle, because back then, you know, they were doing the strapping grenades and explosives, so they were checked and whatnot under the threat of main guns from the tanks and all that. And they were clean. They were running, and I mean, no sooner did we get her in the back of the 113, we had to do a makeshift little bed with some stirrups and all the stuff that has to be, and everything being sterile as can be.
Right.
I mean, she was already crowned and ready to deliver, but we did it.
Wow.
And so that was kind of.
Had you been trained on that at all? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They trained you on how to deliver a baby, just in case.
Not to deliver per se ourselves, but how it's done.
Yeah.
And what's done.
How to do it. How to make it
Yeah,
work.
not here's what you do, it's here's how it's done. Yeah. So I knew as much that we had to make her comfortable, we had to have exposure, and we had to have sterility as much as possible. Yeah. And in that environment, it's hard to do, but we did.
And then catch.
And then catch. Really. Yeah. And you know, and she was great. It was, I think, you know, it was probably, she had multiple children, so she was very calm.
Knew what she was doing.
And it was easy.
Yeah.
So I was just nervous about the sterility afterwards, you know, and keeping the baby. Yeah. And luckily, you know, we were with our unit, and there's always a checkpoint Charlie somewhere. And whenever you hear about a checkpoint Charlie in combat, that's a location where there is an evac hospital that has the capability to take care of stuff like that and to evac out further back to the rear where there's an actual hospital. So we had a checkpoint Charlie evac hospital a couple clicks from us. We'd hit the road, and we would fly as fast as the 113 could go and drop them off at checkpoint Charlie. And after what happened after that was, we don't know, but we did our part and transport them.
Wow. So there's a kid around 34 years old now who was like, yeah, maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't, or he or she, boy or girl. Do you remember? Boy. Yeah. It's a pretty cool story. Yeah.
So yeah, that happened pretty quick, and then you know, that was the start. That was basically the start of my military career.
Wow. How do you feel like did that, like coming back, leaving, like, what would you call that? Like leaving that tour of the field, like getting back to Germany, that transition back, like how do you feel? Did it change you? Or was it something that at the time you just kind of like kept your head down and did the job, or did it have any effect on you? Did you feel like a different person after that 6 months? Nothing like you'd ever experienced before in your life at that point, right?
I think on one hand, I was too dumb not dumb.
Naive.
Young.
20 years old. 21.
To feel the emotional change or of the things that I just saw. Mm-hmm. But what I do remember feeling is, saying to myself, wow, because during training, we only worked on dummies, mannequins. And I remember saying to myself that the stuff that I did, the invasive stuff that I did in the dark and in combat, on the move, over bumps and stuff, really works. when you see your training actually work, that was one thing that I remember I took with me. I don't think coming back, we were all anxious to get back. I know we would have command meetings every night, and we were always waiting to hear we're moving south, because when the ceasefire was called by President Bush, we were literally in the middle of chasing down, our task force was in the middle of chasing down a battalion of Iraqi tanks who had uprooted, because a lot of them were in defensive positions buried, uprooted, and were heading towards Baghdad. We were chasing them down. They called the ceasefire. We stopped right in place. And I just remember listening. We had a like a transistor radio, and we were listening to President Bush's speech, and everybody went crazy, running around the desert like chickens, and happy. But being naive, thinking, okay, it's done, let's go. We kept getting the word that we're moving north. And we knew that if we were moving north, that was continuing to move towards Baghdad. We were waiting for the day that they'd say, you're moving south. Because if they said you were moving south, we were going back towards Kuwait, back over the berm, and we were going to start to get ready to load up and get our vehicles on the ships and all that and get back to Germany. So that was painful, it seemed like every night, north. Or if we weren't moving, every couple days we'd move. Sometimes we'd stay for a week, then we'd move, and it was just always north. It was never south. And then finally the day came and we were moving south. So that was a lot of anxiety there, because we just wanted to be over. We wanted to be out of that environment. It's hot. It's, which is okay for me. I grew up in hot, dry heat. The heat really didn't bother me. 120 degrees, dry, just drink a lot of water, you're fine. If it was humid like it is most places that we were stationed, I'm still not used to the humidity. That just sucks the energy right out of you. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to get out of that environment. Once we did, we eventually got back to Germany, and except for your downtime and maybe your dreams, you don't have a lot of time to dwell on anything, because you're right back to training. You're right back to the training regimen and everything that we do to be ready for something like that. So,
is that by design, do you think?
It is. Yeah. It's not by design as far as Top Gun. Goose died. Viper said, get him up. Get him up there. Keep sending him up. It's not like that. It's by nature. It's how the Army works. You come back, like right now, if you don't deploy, there's always a rotation of things that you do, depending on the type of unit that you are in the field, and you do it over and over and over until you get the call to deploy. And then when you go, you're absolutely ready. Mm-hmm. So you may not deploy anywhere for a year or two or 3 or 4, but you're doing this and then this and then this, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it ends in an exercise. If you're successful, you do after action reports, what went right, what went wrong, and then you go on a break, some leave or something, come back and you start do this, and you do it all again, and you keep doing that is by design.
It's like an intricate system,
yes, well-designed but not system. To take our minds off of. Now you come back from deployment, once everybody's back and you get your sensitive items and everything together, you send people that want to go on leave, and then when they come back, you get everybody right back into a recovery phase, recover all your equipment, and get right back into that rotation again in case you're called on to deploy again. So it's all by design. But back then, I think it hit me later rather than sooner, because getting all the way back, and then I know one of the first things that was on my mind getting back was getting Mom over, and it's like I came back on a little bit of an advance party, so I basically just had to, for like 2 or 3 weeks, I just checked in with one of the senior sergeants, and then basically I got to do my own thing. I couldn't do anything. There was no admin people or anybody there. So I had to wait for the main body to come back. And of course, you know what that's like. Here I am. Was I a specialist? I think I was promoted to specialist at the time, and I was nobody. as far as, oh yeah, let's dig through wherever we need to dig through to find that paperwork that we started before he deployed just so he can get his family over here. I was like low on the priority list. So I had to kind of push once we were back to somewhat of a normal operation and we got our aid station running and all that. I had to push for, okay, hey, I need to do this. So got all the paperwork done again, eventually got mom over there. Right. And it was all new for mom. And we were newly married in a foreign country. This, I had gotten us an apartment in the next town over, about 30 clicks from where I worked in a town called Bremerhaven, which from our apartment window, you could see the seawall and the North Sea was right there. Oh, very cold, very windy, but that's the only thing that was available. And that's where we lived. And sure enough, a couple months goes by. Mom was starting to get used. She's driving a little bit and getting comfortable with driving, getting her international driver's license, and she's doing all that. She could drive to post, go to the grocery store. And then one day we get the notice that we're drawing down. And what that means is that our mission in Germany is done. You might recall me saying I was stationed with 2nd Armored Division forward. They forwarded an entire division from the United States to Germany, where we were, to protect the northern borders. That division came from Fort Hood, Texas. They left a division there, and they sent a division. There was no need. The wall came down. There was no need for the Berlin Brigade, and our unit was drawing down, meaning they cased the colors up, and all that division goes right back to Fort Hood and resumes operations at Fort Hood and is no more in Germany. So now, after combat and coming back and then finally getting mom over there, we find out that we're going back. And my unit, 366 Armored Battalion, was the first unit out of all the other units to go. So we had to quickly, it was like, I had some advice from one of the senior sergeants in our platoon saying, look, in times like this, if you have somewhere you want to go, put it down on this packet. He gave us packets, and we were supposed to fill these packets out on the back. List 3 places where you want to go. He said, in times like this, when the Army is having to draw down and fit people places, if there's somewhere you want to go, now's the time to put it. You'll probably get it. The only thing that mom and I could think of is we wanted to be close to family. So I put down my first choice was Fort Irwin, California. We'd be about 2 hours from Papa and Grandma and 2 hours from Grandma and Grandpa. And 3 weeks later, I got orders for Fort Irwin, California. So we left Germany. And you got to remember, 22 years in the Army, every little thing we did on the job, as a family, moving from house to house, being on post, being off post, we could be here for a week talking about how it goes and all the different ins and outs and the stories that go along with it.
I bet.
But I skipped forward to, we left Germany, and now we're at Fort Irwin, California, kind of close to home, right back in the desert. But at least it's not, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi.
Yep.
So, and then that Fort Irwin was our second tour.
Yeah, so a lot happened. So 15 years later, you are back in Iraq, but I know a lot happened in that 15 years. But one of my questions I wanted to ask was, so you experienced that all over again in another war 15 years later. I wanted to ask you what was it like going back, the difference between the two experiences, like how different was it 15 years later? I know that like things like the mission were different and stuff like that, right? But like just 15 years is a lot of time. Think like technology, probably the way the military does things. Like, just was it similar, or was it like two completely different experiences?
Two completely different experiences, night and day.
Yeah. So in 2005,
2004 to 2005. Yeah. It would have been OIF 2. So the original OIF was when the invasion happened. And I went over once there was the invasion force set up. Yeah. We came in and relieved them.
This is for 04 to 05. This is for the Iraq War. Could you quickly explain the difference between the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War? Because you specifically, this is like you were over there participating in the war in Iraq. So this had really nothing to do with 9/11, like nothing to do with the war in Afghanistan, right? Is that a fair, or were they more intertwined than people realize?
You've heard or will hear throughout your life all kinds of different opinions on what that was all about. I can tell you now, I couldn't before, but I can tell you now that my personal opinion is that this should have been a Taliban and or Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan war, conflict. It's in my opinion that Iraq happened because the President Bush, was trying to finish what his father started.
Yeah.
Because when the ceasefire was called, nothing happened to Saddam Hussein except for resolutions. We pulled out of there, and what was left was, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you must abide by these resolutions, to which Saddam said, and he started violating them. I personally think that all these years later, they were trying to find reasons to also go into Iraq. And in my opinion, it was, he wanted to finish what his father didn't and get Saddam. So we were on a two-front war.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think, in my opinion, that Iraq and or Saddam Hussein had anything to do with 9/11. I believe that it was all the Al-Qaeda, Taliban led out of Afghanistan and Osama bin Laden. That's my personal opinion. You're going to hear tons of other opinions and ideas about what it was and what it may have been and why we went over there, but that's mine. But two totally different wars. Lots of lessons learned. It was, you go all the way back to the Civil War. Everything was in the woods, forestry, warfare. World War I, European. World War II, European. Heck, you can look at the War of 1812, all those wars.
Urban, yeah.
Korea, jungle. Vietnam, jungle. We had never been in an arid desert environment.
Yeah.
So when we got to the Gulf War, we're here, the enemy's over there, the objective is over there. That's where we got to get to and take the objective. They call that a linear battlefield, and you move as units, and each has a responsibility, and you do things synchronized, and you overwhelm the enemy. That's how it works. We were successful, and then that war was over.
What year was that?
That was the Gulf War, the original Gulf War.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, there's all kinds of names. People call it the original Persian Gulf War, but it really, that's the Persian Gulf War. What was going on starting in after 2001 with Afghanistan and Iraq, it was properly named, or I should say appropriately named, the War on Terrorism was the official name for it. And then you had Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, OIF, OEF.
Right.
Some people refer to that as Persian Gulf II, but really it's not that. Totally different. It's no more a linear battlefield that you're just going across saying we need to get to that objective. You actually establish bases in the enemy territory.
Wow. Yeah.
And you are placed there. They call them FOBs, forward operating bases, and you actually go on missions out of there and then come back to there.
Okay.
Load back up, rehearse, do whatever, where you live, eat, sleep, and then you go back out and do your ambushes, cordon searches, the word I can't think of, when you go out and you meet and greet, do meet and greets, and make nice with people, with some of the sheiks out there and the leaders, civil affairs type missions, and then you come back to the FOB. So versus being in a desert, we lived out of our vehicles. We cleaned our clothes in sand pits and flipped them out and dried them on a line. If we had to get moving, we had to pull everything in and get moving. More of a permanent, and what they call that is a linear battlefield. But in 2004 and 5, with the OAF, OEF, it's called SASO, SASSO. It's called Civilian Support Operations. So that's the difference. Stability and support is we're based, and we work out of that base, and we go out and we do our missions.
That's really cool to think about the tactics behind, like, everyone's played like the game Risk, right? Where you
Right.
kind of get like this very like rudimentary childish idea of like wartime strategy. But like to hear that is really cool insight into like people's jobs were to figure out what the strategy was going to be for this particular conflict. And that it's like a really interesting insight. Like that was the idea they came up with, what they thought would work. And yeah, that's really
A
fascinating.
lot of places in the Army, training centers, Fort Irwin. It was called Fort Irwin. It was also called NTC, National Training Center, and then Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk, Louisiana. Johnson. And some of the military installations have changed names.
Sounds like they do that
That's
a lot.
exactly
Yeah,
that's
why do they do that
exactly
a lot?
what you train on there. I remember, I was at the beginning of that. I remember how Fort Irwin changed, and we started, instead of just force on force, we were establishing FOBs, and we were doing missions out of the FOBs, and it was all new to everybody. They built sim cities, so we could do close quarters combat in the sim cities. The way it was going to be, they took our M16 rifle and they shortened the barrel down to make it an M4, so it wouldn't get caught up on doorways when you're trying to go through doorways as a squad. So all kinds of things changed for stability and support operations, and actually being in the enemy territory and working out of a FOB, living on that FOB, and that's why you might have heard back in the day, on the news and stuff, Tikrit, Bagram. Sadr City, because those were places where there were military forward operating bases, and we were right in the enemy's backyard. They would get mortared, bombed. We would go out and do missions. It was just, it was chaos. But that's the difference between the modern day battlefield with what's going on now. Whatever our next war is, what's going to look like, have no idea. It may be something like Sasso. It might be a linear battlefield where we're just moving across to an objective. Who knows? Yeah. But as of OIF and OEF, that's the kind of operations that it was. Completely different from back in 90 and 91.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. Yeah, because then you have mobility, then you have support and structure, like you said. The Bagram, that's isn't that the one where Lone Survivor, and they come out of that one and grab those guys from there?
Yeah, actually, I misspoke. Bagram is
that's a more that's not what we're talking about. Okay.
A lot of the main, you're right, but a lot of the main cities, Bagram is not in Iraq. Bagram is
Ramadi.
Ramadi is one.
Ramadi.
That was in the news a lot. Tikrit, of course, things around Baghdad. That's because they were, I was in 1st Cav Division out of Fort Hood. We were in Sadr City, which was northeast Baghdad, and it was considered the slums. 2.4 million people in a 2 square mile area.
No kidding. 2.4 million in 2 square miles?
Yeah.
What?
It was kind of, if you look at a map, you see Baghdad, and you get a definitive marked off area up here like a diamond, and that's Sadr City. We actually had our base at an old Iraqi police station right next to the Marlboro cigarette factory. And literally when our forward operating, our walls, our fob walls, right across the fob walls were little adobe buildings. And the kids used to run around on the rooftops and at us. And so some of our border walls were real close to this. That's how close to the city we were. But you can definitively see Sadr City on a map because it looks like a diamond.
Okay.
And we operated in there. And when I say slums, we're talking raw sewage in the streets, fuel spills in the streets, no electricity half the time. If anything's working, it's working off a generator until the generators don't work. Really, that was kind of the slums of Baghdad. So history goes that back in the day, al-Saddam, one of the former leaders of Iraq, who was a Sunni by culture, banished all the Shiites to that 2 to 3 square mile area in northeast Baghdad that called Sadr City, because it was after al-Sadr, one of the past al-Sadrs, banished because they were the Sunnis and the Shiites were at each other, so he banished a lot of the Shiites to that area. So it's Shiite led there, and it's just
2 miles.
When you say the children would run around and play pew pew, like it's because like is that because they're children with imaginations and they're out there having fun, like, or because that's what I'm imagining. Like, so when you said that, what I thought was like, yes, like my kids go outside and they play guns and cops and robbers and stuff, and like that's what those kids are, just kids too, or was that not like that?
Well, you think of it this way: you're on a forward operating base, and you're from here to maybe where our vehicles are parked. The fall ball is, I don't know, 15, 18 feet high, however it was. And the adobe roofs are a little higher than that, and you can see the kids running. And it happened to be a building that my platoon was occupying. My medics were occupying there, so you could see them through the windows, and we were constantly seeing these kids. One of two reasons. What you just said, they're just being kids, right? Or they're being taught, you know, and I am inclined to think that they're being taught that is the enemy. That's the culture. We're the West. We're never going to be welcome. But having each other's back and having your own back, you have to think the worst in case it does happen. And it's not something that I'm proud of, but what we used to do, and they would scatter like ants, because you never knew if they were going to pull out a real weapon and shoot, because that had happened. We would take our 9mm that had they wouldn't see the guns. They had no idea where it was coming from. We turned on our red dots and we would laze them with the red dot, and they go running, and they go running inside. And that basically for us alleviated the threat.
Sure.
Yeah. I think everybody has seen enough retellings of that in movies where like children were used.
I've seen that exact thing where in the movies the little kids are coming up and they're
doing that, and you've got things like the Hurt Locker. Look at the end of Hurt Locker. You know, that right there is not Hollywood. That's stuff. That's actual stuff that would happen. They use the enemy over there. They use civilians. They use, you know, women, the biggest threat that we had over there was, you know, not sophisticated conventional weapons, not unconventional weapons. Crudely put together improvised explosive devices. When you're going down the highway, it could be anything from an empty Coke can to an dog carcass to a Hershey's candy bar wrapper to whatever that has an IED under it or in it that's ready to explode as you drive by. Or it may be daisy chained, right? So you have to always be on guard, and you have to always assume the worst. These kids would get more intricate with they would actually start making stuff. And you just never knew if we had to do work, and that's where we slept too. And so it was just our way of saying, you know, get away, don't do that. Yep. But also, you know, we didn't know who, you know, we were constantly under mortar attack. So we never knew who were the informants, you know. Kids that are old enough to say, okay, well, over on this side, there's a building and there's lots of soldiers.
Yeah, like scouting type stuff.
There's a reason we never do anything without a cause or a reason to do it. There's logic in everything that we do. Now, there's a lot of people that would say if something makes sense to do, the Army won't do it. That's just in joking. But there's always reason and logic in what we're doing, and it's so that when it's over, we can come home.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm sure that the year that you spent there was full of stuff like that. Just, yeah, I'm sure you have tons of little scenarios and stories like that. I would love to hear someday.
You know what the best thing about going was in 2004, before I deployed, I had laser eye surgery.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I was one of the first people on Fort Hood to have it.
Yeah.
I got opinions from lots of people. I just didn't dive into it. Yep. And all the stories that I was told, they loved it. It worked great. And so I said, finally, I'm going to do it. I got evaluated for it, and I found out that I was eligible to have either LASIK or PRK, which is just two different laser procedures. And based on how old I was and that I was still active, I chose PRK, and I had it done. And after a complication in the left eye, after that got resolved, I could see without wearing glasses. I only got about 12 to 15 months out of it, and I was right back in glasses again. But that 12 to 15 months I got was my entire time in Iraq. So I didn't have to worry about wearing anything over my glasses.
Goggles.
And if we got gassed and we put our gas masks on, I didn't have to worry about the lenses that are in there.
Right.
I was able to put ballistic goggles on and go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the best thing about going there, I think.
Yeah. No,
'cause
I can understand that.
To this day, I will not
nice.
say anything bad about it, even though I only got a short 12 to 15 months. It was the best 12 to 15 months it could have been.
Right.
Yeah. So coming home from that, probably, so you've been married a lot longer. You had 3 children that you didn't yet have the first time. Like, must have been. And I remember you coming home and going out and like they moved the buses and you guys walked forward and like I remember all of that, seeing you for the first time. What was that day like? Like, I would love to hear from your perspective, like when the buses moved and you guys walked forward and you found us and saw us for the first time. Like, just what was that? What did that feel like? It's kind of I don't know. Is that like private? Do you mind sharing that?
No, I don't.
Okay, yeah.
First, I thought it was stupid. You know, like as far as the bus thing, it's
Right.
like, are you ready to see your fixer-upper?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Like, just get the dang things out of the way. Yeah.
Where's Ty Pennington when you
all
need it?
that we wanted to do and all the family members wanted to do is reunite.
Yeah.
And we had to sit there and wait on this big choreography of getting the buses together. And I know they were probably
Interesting.
dying, and we are too. Plus, it's hot and we're having to stand in formation.
Awesome.
And then, so I thought that was all
It
unnecessary.
is a little weird when you say it, put it that way.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the buses part. And I know that probably what was going on your guys' end and our end is we're supposed to be like, no, we're just like, where?
There's a sea of people.
You know, elation for everybody except for me.
Why is that?
Because I was fortunate. It was elation for me, but I don't think as much as it could have been because I was so basically throughout the entire year there, everybody got to go on R&R for 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
We had our choice either going home or going on the Mercy ship, and which is that big white medical, Titanic looking boat.
That's still in operation. Is that the one that came to New York City during COVID? See, I know my stuff.
So I was fortunate to kind of wanted to do Christmas.
Yeah, you were home for Christmas.
We went basically was March to March.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Everybody in our unit by December, they planned it to where enough people went that it would be done by December. They didn't want to worry about sending anybody on R&R for the months of January and February because we were going to be preparing to come home. So they made sure that it was ended in December. My thought was, I'm the platoon sergeant. My guys are going to go first. I'll go last. Our first sergeant, his philosophy was the same. It didn't hurt that, that was during Christmas time too.
Right. Yeah.
And I know that Mom and you guys really thought that, man, if you could get Christmas, that would be great. Then you could at least say during your deployment, you were home for Christmas. So I was able to, everybody in my platoon had gone, and I was the last one left. I got to come home for my 2 weeks over Christmas.
Yep.
So my elation happened at that point.
Yeah.
With you guys, with
7
Mom
months
and you
in.
guys. And then, of course, leaving sucked. It always does.
Yeah.
But we both knew that it would just be January, February, and I'd be home.
Yeah.
So even though it was still elation second time, I don't think it's as much as that it could have been because we had just seen each other and it just, we had already got the long part done from March to December. Yeah. And now it was kind of like a quick 2 months, and then I'm back home. So
was that like
it still was joy.
Was that a mix of emotions? Because it was only 2 or 3 months, but there's still like the danger factor, or the last 3 months not so much like that because you say you're preparing to leave, or is it still you're still like operating?
No,
or
we're still operating. Yeah, we're operating, but we're starting to
wind down.
We're starting to we have to start wind down and start to get stuff packed. It's a very tedious balance between staying operational,
ready,
training the next unit that's going to take our place, but starting to kind of ramp up and pack. I mean, it's a logistical nightmare. Vehicles, equipment, everything from pencils to tanks.
Yeah.
It's not a job I want. Nope.
So
the R&R,
pencils and tanks.
When you came home for R&R, was that I don't remember, was that a big reception, or is that more like they just kind of drop you off at the airport and you come? Like, I don't remember what that was like. I
think it was.
With the buses moving Mom. Was like, okay,
yeah,
it was
that was when we came home for good.
Yeah. Were we on?
Mom came to get me.
Yeah.
On my R&R.
Were we in school or something?
And brought me home, and you guys were at home.
We were at home, or did we come home from school? Oh man, I feel like I kind of remember that. Yeah. Yeah. I remember you coming home was a lot different than, I remember being in a gym. Was that the first time?
That's when I left.
Not for R&R. That was when he left in March.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being in the gym and seeing you guys kind of, I don't know if you were in formation and they kind of marched you out. And then, you coming home, like just a completely different feeling, like very polarizing. Yeah. One complete sadness and the other just like the opposite. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah, it's insane.
I don't know what it's like. I didn't know what it was like from Mom's vantage point, but being on that bus, looking down through the window, I think one of the saddest things I've ever felt or seen in my life was, there's perspective from my perspective, right? Looking down, and there's your mom's and yours perspective of looking up, but usually those windows are tinted. So it was very sad for me once I got on the bus looking at Mom, and she's going nuts, right? But not knowing, I'm watching her eyes dart back and forth because she doesn't know where I am on the bus, and that really was like, just go ahead and take the heart out, squeeze it. Yeah.
Yeah. The movies do that a lot. Like especially with military people leaving, and then the woman's running through. Yeah, see, tears. Yeah. The woman's like running through the train station and like bye and can't Yeah.
Except for the one where they show her running through the train station, saying bye, and she slams right into those metal poles.
I haven't seen that one. I gotta watch that one.
Yeah,
emotional.
I think,
sorry, honey.
Yeah, having a wife of my own, like kind of imagining myself in that situation. I obviously have never gone through anything like that, and I can't relate at all, but it does bring tears to my eyes to think about what it must have been like now that I know what it's like to be husband and wife. Yeah, it's which I think kind of to wrap up a little bit, I think it points to the incredible sense of duty and sacrifice on your end, which thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. I just can't fathom how you did it. Like just from the family perspective, like from a father and a husband perspective, forgetting like what you were doing and what you were going there for and what your job was, all of that, just, leaving, not knowing that you're going somewhere where you're not going to see the people that you love more than anything else for a whole year, is what it, there's the R&R, but like really it feels like you're not going to see them for a year.
But life also, you don't know if you're coming back.
In that, and then you bring in the
last time you see that,
and then you bring in the job. And it makes it even
and the
worse.
risks, the very real nature of the job.
Let me tell you one thing that will help you maybe put it in perspective. And then you'll think, oh, okay. Orders are orders. I really didn't have a choice.
It was like that or prison, you mean? Like,
pretty much.
I
mean, I did have a choice, but the other choice would have been very bad for me.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
It's still, but you have to grab your internal, your courage and you always fall back on your training. What's going to keep you alive is falling back on your training, not just in your profession, but also as a soldier. I mean, it's like a double life. You've got all your soldier tasks, because there's times when you get caught in a situation has nothing to do with medical. It has everything to do with, I need to set up a gun nest here, or I need to range field of my range of fire where I'm going to fire. I need to turn into an infantry person because my primary specialty was medical, but everybody is infantryman or rifleman first. And that's why they teach you those things in boot camp. But you fall back on your training and you fall back. It's always the guy next to you. Everybody leans on the guy next to him and the training. And one thing that I always said while we were training, and I said during the time we were there, and I always said afterward, the particular unit that I was in, we were very well trained. We had that cycle. We had a battalion commander who was just vicious, but for a reason. And we were very, very well trained. And it's the reason why most everybody made it back. And but orders are orders, and you got to go and you got to do it. But it is.
Do you feel like you knew what you signed up for, though?
I knew, even at a young, naive age, where I didn't know a lot, I did know what ultimately I could go do. I did know that, hey, this is isn't going to be a 2-year, 3-year stint. I did think that, but I didn't think that it was going to be that, and I'd learn something, get out, and then try to use it in the world. I did know that it was possible. The ultimate thing that I could do is go to war. Yep. And sure enough, it happened. Yep. And I think mentally, knowing that, because I don't know. I'm sure if you go in for the college, if you go in for the travel, see the world, you're not thinking about, war, but it's the Army. Even though nowadays it's run almost like any other business. The Army is the Army, and the ultimate thing that we do, we constantly train to be prepared for war, and some people, especially back in the day, didn't really think of it that way. So when it happens,
blindsided.
Thinking back now, knowing what I know, I remember some of the faces, some of the attitudes, and some of the demeanors back in the Gulf War. It was just kind of like deer in the headlights, like we're going to. Yeah, it's because there was such a long period of peacetime. It's like, we're going to war. And I remember that. Didn't really think of it then, didn't really faze me then, but later on, remembering that it was kind of just, everybody was kind of fazed by the fact that we were going to war. But I did. I knew young that ultimately, it could happen. Yeah. And I think that was kind of rare. I don't think most young soldiers coming in thought that, but I did.
Yeah. Yeah, because just like you probably, that was probably a good thing for you, not having the generation before you that was like in war or a recent war, let's say, because you said that a lot of your generation had not seen the war and it was hard to relate. But like you weren't complacent, like you weren't sitting in a base for odd number of years. You were kind of like thrown right into it. Yeah, so that'll kind of wake you up pretty quick versus somebody who's been there for 5 years and is like, I'm just going through the motions, training. Oh, war? What?
Right.
I have to go to war?
Already?
What?
Yeah. In hindsight, I'm glad that it happened that way. Now, it might not have been then, but it's kind of like, I get to that unit, I get trained up really quick, especially on the armored personnel carrier, everything about it. That was my vehicle, my responsibility, all the medical equipment in it, what my job was going to be. And, we did several field training exercises, and next thing you know, we're going to have to put this into practice, and it do not regret it whatsoever.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't, the Army as a whole, the time that I spent in the Army, I have always said, you get a lot of people that complain about it. You get a lot of people who complain there's nothing to do. And we have always said that everywhere we went, whether it was north, south, east, or west, or overseas, you make it what you make it. You find things to do. You find the fun. And I always looked at it this way. The Army is a great institution. Sometimes the people running it aren't so great, but the Army, what other institution can you be a part of that will pretty much allow you to do anything? You want to go jump out of airplanes? Do it. You want to go rappel out of helicopters? Do it. You want to go, special forces? Do it. So it's the Army always provided a home for us, a roof over our head, a meal, school for the kids, It provided all that military umbrella. Healthcare. Huge. If for anything, staying in for the healthcare that we have now, I won't go into it, but you'd be very jealous. It is just, it's phenomenal.
Everything's free.
It's phenomenal. Well, it's not free, but almost. It was, staying in just for the healthcare was worth it, considering how expensive it is. But the Army military community umbrella provided a great life for us. I don't regret a thing.
That's amazing.
And, everything that Mom has learned from it, and she's still in it. And I think you guys enjoyed it. You adapted everywhere we went. You guys were very good at adapting to your schools, to finding friends in the neighborhood. You were very, very good at doing that. And next thing you know, you had new sets of friends. I know that it probably deep down, personally, it was probably hard, and you may have shed some tears or whatnot, but outwardly, you guys always adapted very well.
Didn't know anything else.
I think as a family, I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow. I'm really glad that you feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be a big burden to not feel that way, to feel like regret. Yeah. I'm glad that you feel that way. That's amazing. Yeah.
We are where we are now today because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot to be thankful for. We have.
And the Army brought us to Fort Drum, and Fort Drum ended up being where we retired out of. And look at you guys have married what I call hometown girls.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You're not going to be going anywhere, and we're here to stay now. And and
right,
oh,
we
yeah,
can talk
forget the
about
grandbabies.
Yeah, yeah. Life as a grandparent versus a parent. A lot more cushy. lot less work.
Yeah, you did do the work.
Yeah.
You did the work.
Okay. Yeah, there is like, that was like 1%. I feel like that was like 1% of your life, and logically we can't do the other 99% in one night, but yeah, there's just so, I know, like, take it from me that for me, there is so much more to you than even what we talked about tonight. And yeah, I wish we had the time to just go over it all. And maybe, I think over the course of, I don't know, however many years we got left, like, I look forward to like continuing to learn more about these things that I find more and more important to learn about as I get older. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing all of that stuff that I think probably, I don't know if it's easy for you to share or to bring up, but yeah, again, talking about duty and sacrifice, and thank you for your service. I think we say it at least once a year, but it's not enough. So I just want you to know that I look up to the 22 years of your service, and I look up to so many things about you, but in that one specific area, yeah, thanks a lot. It's a lot to aspire to for a son, and interesting that I don't think that I ever will. Like, that's how great of a role model you are. I don't know that there's much that I could do that would live up to the legacy that you created.
Well, thank you. You're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Okay. We can end on a lighter note. Favorite, we're going to do the same thing in the sport movie. Favorite. Okay, actually,
favorite war.
Actually, we'll get. Yeah, well, actually, I know that you are like, yeah. There is a thing about
movie?
that. Yeah.
Is that what you're gonna do?
So yeah.
Oh,
so
okay. Sorry.
Favorite.
I spoiled it.
This one you can have two answers. We're gonna do two: best or favorite / but then I'm gonna ask most realistic. So they don't have to be the same. So, like, do you have a favorite military movie? Usually they're war related, but like,
you have to do like by era though. That's tough, man. That's tough. Like, if you're doing.
And like,
comparing wars, yeah.
Yeah. Let's
make it broad.
Let's leave like the Band of Brothers out of it, because that's just like a whole nother. Like, let's leave like the series stuff. Just singular movies, like Saving Private Ryan. I can't do any spoilers.
Yes.
I'll just leave it up to you. Yeah, favorite. And
do you even like military movies?
Do you not like them at all?
I cannot watch them.
Okay. Why?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
It's like, never mind. Well, okay. Thanks for everybody coming.
Well, I particularly like Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
You said that. You threw that right out. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because it's hard with a series to compare it to a movie.
Yeah.
Because it's so many hours.
That's I mean, it's the GOAT. Like,
oh yeah,
I can't. It's almost
Band
like
of Brothers, amazing.
Can't say Tom Brady. Got to pick somebody else. Yeah. Or it could be like a top 3 because I know it's hard to narrow that stuff down
too. Not that you're going to ask for my opinion, but
yeah, all 3 of us. I have got mine already locked in.
What?
Yeah, this is an easy one for me.
Man.
I believe it might also take the cake for most realistic, but I'm not sure. I'll leave that up to you. That's going to be.
I don't know if this is considered. I don't know if this is considered a war movie, but I really like Inglourious Bastards.
I do too. That's a great one. It's super entertaining.
Yeah, it is.
Doesn't count. Try again.
I mean,
we won't go for most realistic.
Okay, so that's your favorite, but yeah, that won't count for most realistic. So you have to have a most realistic now too. You can also change your other answer if you want.
And also, your opinion matters 1,000 times more than ours because we have not
you are
going
to be the ultimate decider on the most realistic.
It's gonna be one that you've probably never heard of.
Try me.
Because I'm not sure if it made it in theaters. It was one of those. It's called Restrepo.
Nope, never heard of it. You got me.
Look it up.
Okay.
I'm gonna clip in like the picture of it.
The playbill or whatever.
What is it called?
Restrepo.
Restrepo.
What is like generally
like rest repo?
Yeah,
it's spelled Rest Repo.
What era is it?
It is Afghanistan. It's the Korangal Valley.
Oh, it's a specific story, like
and you can relate. Or something. Yeah, you can relate.
It was
to it.
early in the
Man, there's a lot of good ones.
war when they weren't very adept at picking forward operating bases, so they decided to, for ease of equipment and whatnot, to pick a valley.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they were living in the caves up here.
Oh man,
that
thanks.
Like a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm all set with that one.
All right.
So you
good
said
answer.
Realistic.
So is that your pick for most realistic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that like a documentary? It's a documentary?
Oh, it's a movie.
Oh, okay. It's a
It's
mockumentary.
a movie.
And there's a couple other. I actually have some saved that I still haven't watched on Netflix. There's a few that base it on Afghanistan and units that were getting pummeled.
Yeah.
By enemy they couldn't see because they're up in caves and they're down below, and it's just
that makes sense. That makes sense that you would appreciate the realistic ones more. Like your list of favorites might be the more accurate ones, accurate tellings or retellings of things that actually happened.
Yeah. Besides that, I would probably just say our own. We had, you may or may not have heard of her, but there's a news correspondent. She's a veteran. Her name is Martha Raditz. Mm-hmm. She was embedded with us during our tour there, and there's a book about our specific tour. They are called the Long Road Home.
The Long Road Home. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about I got into Iraq into our FOB on my birthday.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then 5 days later, on April 4th, we took over from the unit that was there, and we got ambushed and had a mass casualty, and it's called Black Sunday. So for me personally, April 4th of every year, when April 4th rolls around, I kind of pause to think about that day. And it wasn't just us. It was a major changeover in units in Iraq. And so Tikrit, Ramadi, all those other places, they got hit as well. The insurgents decided they would do it while we were doing our changeover. We'd be most vulnerable. And but it was particularly bad with us in Sadr City. We went out on our first mission in the city at dusk, and they got pinned down and ambushed in there, and we had to send quick reaction force, all kinds of people in there to get them. When the night was over, we had 8 KIA and 72 wounded in WIA, and just a horrible night. So a book was written about it, and called The Long Road Home, and it's about my unit there. So I would have to say that if I were to pick a realistic one besides Restrepo, it would be our story.
Right.
They call Long Road Home, but it's about Black Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard you talk about that quite a few times. Yep.
What about you?
Favorite? I think my favorite and most my guess for most realistic are actually, I think my favorite, boy, it's hard for me to pick favorites, but if I had to just pick one, I really enjoy it. Like, I like Jarhead. I like Jarhead a lot. That one is, I could watch that one over and over again. Most realistic, I think, would go Hurt Locker. I think we've talked about that before, but I think I asked you, Hurt Locker feels, for some reason, it's like the way they made it just felt like, is that how it is? Or was that it wasn't Jarhead? Was it Hurt Locker?
No, I can tell you the Hurt Locker. It's weird because there are some things that are very realistic, but then I was very disappointed to see them kind of go off the deep end a little bit with stuff that is totally unrealistic. Okay. Like the scenes where they go back to their hooch and they're drinking. That does not happen.
Yeah.
That does not happen. Now, maybe with SEALs, I don't know, because that wasn't a SEAL. Yeah. But that just doesn't happen like that. Leaving the fob to go into the city like he did, that does not happen.
Oh, okay. Really? Yeah.
No. Okay. That's Hollywood.
So terrible pick. Not the most realistic.
Yeah, Nick. Jeez.
All right.
I was just going to mention Hacksaw Ridge.
I haven't seen that one. Yeah, I haven't.
You haven't? That one's the opening scene when they get up on, when they're up on top, and it's just like when the fighting starts, you're immediately like, oh.
Okay.
And it's pretty gory.
See, if you know about it, you would have thought that I would have picked that one because it really, when it comes down to it, it's like, about the medic.
Right, yeah. I knew that. Yeah. It's about, yep.
That's why I like Band of Brothers, just because Band of Brothers is a good series, but they have one in the middle there. I think it's 6.
Yeah, but they just follow. Dedicated for is that Bastogne?
When they spend that horrible winter in a standstill.
Yeah. And it's just the medic running,
pummeled by the Germans, by artillery, and the medic is just going that entire winter.
That's a great episode. Yeah, we were soldiers.
I've heard Save It Private Ryan is very realistic. Is like quite.
It's hard to
realistic.
Different wars we're talking.
But yeah, we were
Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down. Yeah.
That was another good one.
Yep. But then I'm trying to think of what captures like the. Yeah.
Then you could get into the older movies too. You ever seen Glory? I love Glory. Yep.
There's so many.
There's so many good World War II ones.
But the
Civil War too. Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan was highly researched.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, was it Tom Hanks?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't Opie, his name?
Yeah. Ryan Howard.
Yeah.
Ryan Howard.
Oh yeah.
They did the research for that movie. Right? Like the opening scene is considered one of the most realistic opening scenes that depicted what it was like just being mowed down like that until they could get enough people up there. Yeah. But
that's the other feeling I got with Hacksaw Ridge too.
Not Saving Private Ryan. What was the other one you mentioned?
Mom said We Were Soldiers.
Oh, We Were Soldiers. That was actually filmed when we were at Fort Hood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you guys. We were
I'm in the movie?
We were at Fort Hood.
You're a movie star, Nick, didn't you know?
Okay, yeah.
Cool. And so that was kind of neat that happened while we were there. But that is
it's a classic.
Yeah,
I think that's based off. Obviously, it's based off a true story of the going from a regular cav to air cav.
Yeah.
Was the only way to drop troops in, pick them up, drop them out, casualties, and that's how the air cav was born.
Yep.
The Pearl Harbor is another movie.
All right. Yep.
But have you guys seen Midway?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like Midway? Yeah, Midway. That'll get some tears. Dunkirk is really good too. I remember watching the planes diving at the aircraft carriers in Midway and just being like, I don't even understand that.
Do you remember when the movie?
I don't get how somebody has the courage to do that.
Yeah. Unbroken. You ever seen
Unbroken is another great one.
War in Japan. That one's
that's a whole other level of.
Right. Same thing. More in the Pacific. Right?
Like in an airplane, dive bombing an aircraft carrier that is shooting at you and shooting all your buddies down, and you have to drop your ordnance at the last second to make sure that you hit it, and then get out of there without hitting the ocean. Like, come on.
Yeah, and those guys were, there's 23, 24-year-old guys.
Exactly.
We just
Unbelievable.
They just don't make them the same these days.
I'm sure the military has those guys nowadays for sure. But it was more people back then. Like it was like Billy from down the block was like enlisting with all of his friends.
And you know what? Yeah, and like maybe we'll see, like God forbid anything. Yeah, maybe hopefully we never see it again. But like maybe they were saying a lot of the same stuff, and then 9/11 happened, and we saw just how patriotic people could be, and like maybe that's just what it takes. And like I said, hopefully, like we don't have to find out because that would mean something terrible. But yeah, maybe our generation isn't. Maybe they could be brave. Like we don't know. We always compare those guys, like because we see them now, like a lot of the greatest generation. That's right, the greatest generation. But
that's a big reason why a lot of men and women enlisted after 9/11.
Right.
You know, patriotic, and they wanted to whatever was going to happen to retaliate. Whatever was going to happen militarily, they wanted to be a part of.
Yep.
And so there was an enlistment boom.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you really okay? Can you pick a mainstream one? If you had to pick a mainstream one, not something that you'd have to dive into the deep history.
I'm particular to World War II. I love military history. I try to learn everything I can about military history, and about all the wars. I would neck and neck with Civil War.
Yeah.
I would have to say probably Gods and Generals.
Oh yeah.
Or Gettysburg.
Okay. Yeah.
Gettysburg. Why is there not a lot of like great movies on American Revolution? Like there's Patriot
is the GOAT because that's all they needed.
Yeah,
they dropped that
Mel
one
Gibson,
and it was done.
Mel Gibson?
Yeah.
Just buried all the other ones.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to do it as good.
Yeah,
Civil War.
Patriot was that's another one, but I would have to say the anything that has to do with the Civil War.
Yeah.
The big ones.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Is the gods and generals. I have a Civil War. I was given a Civil War gift set, and you open it up. It's got all kinds of stuff in it, history and mementos. But it's got Gods and Generals and Gettysburg and
great.
And go to any of the places, specifically Gettysburg, since it was the.
Have you been, Nick?
No.
I was sent on school resource officer training in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, which is like 30 minutes from Gettysburg. Yeah. And we had an off day, got out early, and I was like, you can't not go. I was there by myself. Yeah. It hits you. It's emotional to just drive through there and looking at the fields and being like, I can't even you feel it. Yeah. It's like it's alive.
You know what it did? What it did to me is now I can't be anywhere. Our own land. There's so many open Gettysburg, and I'm sure other places, but Gettysburg, there's so many open fields that are backed by woods. And after everything that you've watched for that war, you can sit there, and I did this one morning from our bed and breakfast. I sat there with the morning fog, I sat in the chair, and I just looked out there, and I started envisioning troops coming through the trees out into the field. And it's very eerie. Yeah, because that's what they did.
Well, that's what happened in Patriot when they're literally at the farmhouse there, and then all of a sudden you see like a whole brigade marching, and then a whole nother brigade, and then all of a sudden they start fighting like right out on their front porch.
Yeah, it's very emotional.
Yeah,
we spent some time there. We have to go back because we didn't finish it all. We only got through about half the museum, and we went on we did our own car tour. We went on a bus tour, and we did a Segway tour as well, and.
Yeah, you gotta
just
go.
Me in my military mind, I can't just be like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool." I'm like, "Nope. Here's Cemetery Ridge, and here's Seminary Ridge, and here's Cemetery Ridge. Okay, and I'm up there, and she's dying. Like, let's go.
Yep.
And
that's exactly
I have to get the perspective of here's where they were. Here's where they came in. There's where they went down in. I mean, we're standing on the place that it happened, and they're all buried over here.
Yep.
And it's just. It's
if
so surreal.
If you dig, you'd find shells and
the things we subject our poor wives to.
And then you go to all the different there's landmarks for everything. The peach orchard, Devil's Den, the wheat field, where all these major battles took place. Big Round Top, Little Round Top, Big Round Top, and it's like you see pictures of where the snipers hung out at Devil's Den, which is a bunch of huge boulders that are leaned up against one another that make great coverage for them to come out and shoot up at Little Big Top or a little big round or whatever it's called, and then go back behind the rocks. Those rocks are still there today that you can climb all over where they climbed over and they died. And you can still go up there and climb on those rocks. And the nice thing about Gettysburg, if you haven't been, is as long as you don't mess with the monuments, there's monuments everywhere. You can go up and you can touch them, you can take pictures, you can read them. But the neat thing about it, besides don't mess with the monuments, obviously don't deface anything, but there are no borders on the battlefield. If you want the very last battle before the war was over, when the Union troops marched across the field and basically overran Lee's troops and ended the war, ended the battle, 3-day battle in Gettysburg. If you want to walk and march across that field that they did, you could. And you could march through there, look back and get a perspective of, wow, I could see all that way, but if I walk out here this far and then I look back, it's like, well, it's way up there. You can walk the same footsteps that they did. They don't have any of that roped off. You just can't climb on the cannons. You can't climb on the monuments, but you're free to walk and to roam the woods.
That's heavy.
Wherever. You can drive your car somewhere, get out, and you can, and it's just to see to be in the woods and see where they made all their earthworks and whatnot, and know that, back then there were soldiers in these earthworks that died in these earthworks, and you're right there walking all over this stuff. As long as you got to be respectful in the cemetery, and don't deface or mess or climb on any of the monuments. You can do anything else and walk through there like they did, and that's what's cool about it.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's like that at Fredericksburg or any of the other Vicksburg or any of the other ones, but I know it's like that at Gettysburg, and it's neat. It's neat to be able to walk in their footsteps to do that, and sometimes it's kind of eerie, but it's just amazing, and it's seems
like a homeschool field trip in the future, maybe.
Yeah, I want to go.
Yep. Yeah, no, I've never been. I mean,
all the kids, and then I'm going to be like standing behind all the kids. That's amazing.
You can come too. I've never been. I mean, I've been to Sackett's Harbor, and some stuff happened there, but
in Fort Stanwix.
There was a sign I saw somewhere.
Harbor was very important.
very important.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
Saratoga's
saying.
not far either.
I've been there.
Saratoga's not far.
All right, we got to wrap up. This
Yeah.
is thanks for being here and giving us your time and
Thanks for having me. And
camera. Thanks for coming, Mom,
Yep.
and providing all the fact checking and the the details.
Do you need me to come while you're editing to tell you, nope, that was wrong. Nope, that was,
Yeah, we'll put it in the bottom of subtitles like an asterisk.
could be correct.
Yes.
You did pretty good staying quiet on the dating stuff, getting the timeline wrong there.
I think I was pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. Okay.
close.
Close enough.
But that's okay.
Close enough.
Yeah, that's how many years?
You're
35
doing-
years.
Yeah, I know. I think
get
back
some
to
grace.
there's stuff that I already can't remember from
Yeah.
9 years ago.
It definitely.
Remember enough, you can be forgiven for stuff like that.
Yeah. It
Just gotta
definitely
remember the
feels
anniversary.
like we. It definitely feels like we scratched the surface. I mean, there's so much more. I would love to have gotten into the details about. And we. I mean, you guys
we'd love to
definitely
have
come
you.
back on.
Love to have you back on.
If you'd ever
Sometime.
want to have me back on, just let me know when.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah. And thanks
Sounds good.
for being so generous with your time. For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no
Yes.
problem.
Yep. And just to highlight kind of what we talked about today, once again, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
22 years is a long time to sacrifice. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Absolutely.
That's it. See you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.